And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
RCPA chamber pressure looks good.
Traveling up. Roger, roger, Atlantis.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Fighting downside FD off. Bring in FD off. Off. It's orange!
Orange 45! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage.
What is it?
Put that in the big bag, Eagle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
If there's methane, it'd be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You dead? Sure. We don't need any more of these.
Hello everybody. Wonderful NSF coverage. We're live from the Kennedy Space Center and the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station this evening because we've got two very exciting launches to come. Joining us on site, we have Max Evans. Now, Max, how is the weather looking? I know it hasn't been looking good, but how's it looking at the moment?
You know, it's looking pretty cloudy out here right now, according to the radar. It's looking like stuff is forming to the south of us and inland, but so far the radar is looking pretty clear. But that could change in a matter of minutes here, knowing Florida.
And in the studio, we also have Sawyer. How are you doing, Sawyer?
I'm doing fantastic here. Again, 2 launches in one day, potential records here. I just wish the weather would clear up. And by the way, everyone, thank you for all the 5x5s in chat.
And I'm Brian Caton. I'll take you through at least the first part of today's show with O3B mPower number 3 and number 4 scheduled for launch in just over half an hour. And I've heard in the back channel that the launch auto sequence has started. So even though the weather's patchy, SpaceX still heading for the first of 2 potential launches this evening. But of course, make sure to keep your eyes and ears out because anything can change. The launch windows are quite long. Sawyer, do you have any information on the launch windows, like the times between launches? Any records potentially being broken today?
Because of this delay, there is now the potential for a brand new record. This window for the first launch, which is the O3B mPower launch, is an 88-minute window, of which we already used up an hour of it, 60 minutes of that 88. So there's still plenty of time for that to happen. Then you have the Falcon Heavy, which their 57-minute window opens at 7:29 p.m. Eastern Time. The current record at the Cape between launches is 1 hour and 39 minutes set by Gemini 12 and the Agena vehicle that they later docked with. So, I believe the math for that would be less than 1 hour 39 minutes apart, judging by the clocks on screen, which would indeed be a new turnaround record.
But that is, of course, fingers crossed, if the weather decides to comply with our plans this evening. Now, Max, we opened up the show with the weather. How's it been looking, kind of progressing over the last hour or so? Because you've been out in the field for a little while. This launch was originally meant to occur, I don't know, like 30 minutes ago, something like that. So how's the weather kind of been progressing towards this moment?
Well, I have been watching the radar like a hawk. And as I was saying earlier, seems to be popping up towards south west of us, inland in Florida, kind of by equivalent with Sebastian. I think the forecast for our area though looks pretty clear up until about 8 or 9 p.m. tonight. So we're just hoping that holds true.
Yeah, the SpaceX confirmed a little while ago that it's trending towards. I think it's only a 70% probability of violating with the Falcon Heavy, which is of course later than the Falcon 9. So it all depends on what the weather decides to do.
Yeah, on
We
those
have a
weather
question.
updates, really
Oh,
quick.
go on, Sawyer.
The official numbers were that this one was originally 20% go, but was upgraded to 70%. As for the Falcon Heavy, that is expected to be 50% go at the beginning of the window, with improvements to 70% go by the end of the 57-minute window.
Thanks for that, Sawyer, at the weather desk. We have a question here from Flawed Perspective asking, what are the boosters they're going to be using today? Sawyer, do we know precisely what serial numbers we're going to be seeing fly? Because we're going to see 4 boosters being flown, but only 1 coming back.
That is very true. So the Falcon 9 that we are looking at right now, that will be flying its second mission. This booster 1078 previously launched Crew Dragon Endeavour to the ISS on the Crew 6 mission. Then we get to ViaSat, and it's sort of like a Franken booster, for lack of a better way to put it. It has 3 it has the core, which is B1068, and then the side boosters are 1052 and 1053. The core booster is new, and the other ones have flown 3 and 8 times.
Very a lot of experience then with the side boosters on Falcon Heavy. It's I always find it interesting how these conversions to Falcon Heavy to Falcon 9 and back to Falcon Heavy and whatever SpaceX needs to do to keep up the cadence with Falcon 9. It's I'm always fascinated by the morphing of the different levels of what would the word be? The different levels, the amount of launches that each booster has got under its belt. There you go, for lack of a better term. I'm just going to run through some...
Under its skirt, maybe, since you've got the skirt around the engines?
Under its landing legs? I don't know.
Well, actually, Falcon Heavy ones don't have any legs, so...
Oh, yeah, there you go. Good point. Thanks, Sawyer. I'm just going to run through some super chats and the like here. Oh, and that's actually a brilliant photo there. You can see the soot on the side boosters. You can clearly see where the landing legs have now been removed. And the lack of soot on the center booster, that's from Max earlier on. Yeah, it's very, and it's also very easy to see how sooty one of the boosters is compared to the other because it's flown more, and that grey stripe around the second stage, which we've been seeing on some on the latest Falcon Heavy launches, which Sawyer I think is for thermal management.
Yeah, because these are going to... Well, this one's not going directly to geostationary, but it's going to near geostationary, which is almost the same thing, basically. You're talking approximately 6 hours of cruise time, whereas normally you're talking maybe an hour, hour and a half max for normal Falcon 9 flights. So yeah, that is to help with thermal conditioning.
Mm-hmm. I'm just going to run through these quickly. Thanks to Jim for gifting a Red Team membership. We also have Jack becoming a Red Team member. Mark gifting a Red Team membership. Schoening, sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly, he's become a Launch Director member, one of the highest tiers. Thanks very much for that. You also get your name at the end of NSF Live. And we have John Buck becoming a Red Team member. Musical Wolves with the $5. Thanks very much for that. Hopefully we've answered your question there on ViaSat. And Florida Rich gifting one Red Team member. And Doc has become a flight engineer. Very high up, thanks. We also have a super chat here from Lago and Mark as well. Look through here for some more questions, such as this one from... Decisive Dolphin, good name, asking what's the payload. Max, you've been out there for a little while now. What have we got on top of, well first, let's start off with the Falcon 9. That's the one we're going to see first.
Yeah, so over on Space Launch Complex 40 right now, we have a Falcon 9 single core. The first stage booster is B1078-2, and its first flight was Crew 6, actually not too long ago. It is heading downrange to a medium Earth orbit at about 8,000 kilometers, and it should be touching down in the Atlantic Ocean on the drone ship. Just read the instructions.
I could take over the satellite part at least. So this is O3B mPower 3 and 4. We previously covered the 1 and 2 launch, I should point out, last year. Essentially, these will be higher throughput communications satellites. It's the second generation constellation that is built by Boeing, and O3B mPower here, which is now owned by SES. So it's part of that whole just getting more communication satellites in that medium Earth orbit, all within the necessary ranges. That will bring the constellation, by the way, of O3b mPower up to 4 out of their 11 planned satellites. And besides O3b M1 and 2, all other previous ones were launched on Russian vehicles.
And what do we got on top of the Falcon Heavy on Launch Complex 39A, Sawyer?
Well, we have the ViaSat 3 Americas, which is the first of 3 new geostationary communication satellites that are intended to prove broadband connections from space to about 99% of the world, they claim. The satellites are about 6,000 kilograms in weight and utilize the Ka band to help transmit all of that data. They've got a whole bunch of solar panels to deal with that extra power, and apparently will have a throughput of up to 3 terabits per second. Boy, do I need to talk to my internet provider. In addition to that, there are 2 little satellites that are going to be hitching a ride. You have one by Astranis, which is Arcturus, or Aurora 4A. That will use Ku band. It's about 7.5 gigs per second. And then there's a second one from G-Space called GS1, and that is a small CubeSat, only 22 kilograms, that will help support communication service for the internet as well.
Seems quite the contrast launching a 22 kilo satellite on Falcon Heavy, which was formerly a year ago the world's most powerful rocket operational. That title now being taken twice. A question here asking why are Falcon Heavy's, all of the boosters being expended for this launch? Sawyer, why are they not even trying to recover the side cores? Why is everything being ditched into the Atlantic?
From my understanding, it has to do with the fact that, again, as we mentioned, this satellite is a chunky boy. It is heavy, it weighs quite a lot, and it needs to go all the way to geostationary transfer orbit. You're talking, I believe that's 23,000-ish kilometers up. I know chat will correct me. But regardless, that is a lot of weight to carry up, and you're using already a super heavy vehicle to do it. So at that point, you're guaranteed to get the most performance by saving weight on the landing legs and saving weight on having to store as much extra fuel as you typically would for an RTLS or even a drone ship landing.
And I'm just going to hit these ones here quickly.
And by the way, I'm sorry, it was 35,700 kilometers.
Thanks, Sawyer. Aaron, thanks very much for the super chat here. And thank Jeb with the 10 USD. Thanks very much for that. Brenda becoming a Red Team member. Super Steph gifting 5 Red Team memberships. Thanks very much for that. Bill Moore as well. And another £1 here. Thanks so much for that. Musical Wolves asking, will the cams footage be in concrete detail?
Oh, that was good.
Good one. And
also, I should clarify, by the way, really quick. I misspokenly said geostationary transfer orbit. O3b is going into medium Earth orbit. ViaSat 3 is going into geostationary orbit, or near geostationary orbit, not transfer orbit.
Yeah, Philip Whitehouse quickly getting that in chat. Thanks very much for that. Zach asking here, I was talking about the Sooty boosters just a moment ago, asking why aren't the nose cone Sooty that's on B1052 and B1053, the 2 side cores on the Falcon 9. Well, Alex has just informed me in the back channel that they could be new. It's suspected that they're new. It's not confirmed, but it would make sense if they're new. So that is pretty much the best kind of answer we have on that right now. It's not like, unfortunately, SpaceX does not tweet like the exact serial numbers of the nose cones on each of the boosters, so we can't cross-check that and confirm it. But it would make sense with a new nose cones on the expended boosters.
And if I may do a quick little self-promotion there for NSF, they may not test the nose cones and tell us, but they do test a lot of the engines and first stages, which are available 24/7 at our McGregor Live, which today turned 1 year old.
Happy birthday, McGregor Live. Did we get any special candles yet? Sorry, I haven't actually looked.
Oh, I'm sure
That's
there's always
terrible of
candles
me as
going
an
on over there.
NSF host. Yeah. Looking in here for some more questions. If you have a question for us, we're going to be live for, assuming that both of these launches go ahead as currently scheduled, we're going to be live for a little while this evening. So if you have any questions, you've got plenty of time to get them in chat. Tag us at NASASpaceflight.
And if I may also just point out, now would be a great time to keep an eye on, there we go, on the rocket on screen at the moment, as we are approaching one of Falcon 9's distinct moments. You know what I'm talking about, right?
The T minus 20-minute vent. There you go.
We should be about 10 seconds away from that.
Yeah, you can see the kind of the misting around the Falcon 9 at the moment. It's quite difficult to see because of the sky color at the moment, but we should be seeing that big purging of the lines coming very shortly from Falcon 9. And I believe that is now starting up on the strongback.
Exactly it is. I almost said indeed, but I can't use that one. I'll go with exactly. For those who are unaware, this is preparations ahead of the second stage loading. So the second stage LOX loading will begin in about 4 minutes, and you'll know that's begun when this vent stops. So that is purging the lines, making sure they are clean, and that everything is ready to accept the supercooled liquid oxygen into the second stage, which uses that as the oxidizer, and the fuel, a reminder, is RP1, which is rocket grade kerosene.
And we just got word that the RP1 has officially completed loading. So fingers crossed, if the weather cooperates, we are still heading for a launch in just over 19 minutes time. Looking through here for some more questions. First, though, I'll just hit a few more of these. Multi-Space Industries gifting a Red Team membership. Thanks very much for that. Also gifting a Red Team membership is Chris W. And Grissi has upgraded to Capcom. That means you get access to the Discord if that's something you fancy. And we also have another Red Team membership being gifted by We Will Rocket You. Thanks very much for that. And a super chat here from Jim. Thank you very much for that. And a super chat from Joe is asking. Now, I'm not sure if we'll have numbers, like solid numbers to go, concrete numbers, if I may say so, on this on this one here. Asking how fast will the Falcon Heavy core be going at BECO? Now, BECO with Falcon Heavy, if I'm remembering correctly, is the side cores. So if you're talking about side cores, I don't know. And if we're talking about the center core, I also don't know. Sawyer, do we have any numbers on that at all?
I've been trying to look into it. The hardest part is that the two most recent Falcon Heavy launches were both for the U.S. Space Force, which means all of the data was cut off after stage separation, and they focused solely on the first stage. So I'm trying to recall, I guess it would have to be one of the previous launches before that, of what the cutoff velocity was. So I would have to look into that for you. But fast. I can tell you it is very fast.
Yeah, a lot faster than we would have previously seen, because they're not recovering these. They're literally going to be pushing these boosters to the brink of their performance. We have a question here asking from Whitney, asking what are the 4 towers for? Well, considering, Max, I'll throw this one to you. Yesterday, we saw some pretty stormy weather. We saw a bit of lightning. So seriously, answer the question. What are the 4 towers around Falcon 9 for?
So the 4 towers located around the launch pad are to serve as points for lightning to strike, other than the actual rocket itself or the strongback. And they also have, I can't remember what the exact terminology is, but they have cabling down from each of the lightning towers to disperse the charge throughout the ground, so there isn't any centered charge for any, I guess you could say, troubles. These storms yesterday were a prime example of why these lightning towers exist, because we saw probably 3 or 4 strikes on 39B alone, and even though SLS currently is not there, it was a fantastic display of why these lightning towers are so critical, because the last thing you want when a rocket is fueled, especially, is to have a strike, and for that strike to serve as some point of ignition for the fuel or the oxidizer on board, because that will lead to a very bad day for pretty much everybody involved.
I'm just looking it up now. I think they might be called catenary wires, but I'm not sure on that. That's just something that has pinged into my head from the very far back of my mind. On that question earlier about
Yeah. By the way, I just want to say, we did
Go on,
see some
Sawyer.
crazy lightning strikes yesterday as well from some of our Space Coast Live cameras too. So you can always watch Space Coast Live 24/7 to see it. But yeah, in this case, thunderbolts and lightning, very, very frightening, and also appropriate, I guess, to say, there's the video, to say Galileo
There you
in the whole
go.
space thing. But that was lightning hitting 39A yesterday, which SpaceX has said they checked out the pad and everything is cleared with the Falcon Heavy there. But that's just, yeah, Mother Nature saying hi to the lightning rod.
And on the that's a brilliant photo that SpaceX released on Twitter. You can clearly see the lightning hitting the top lightning mast at the LC-39A. On the question earlier about velocity with BECO and MECO, some rough numbers. They're not hard numbers. Rough numbers, about 8,000 kilometers per hour at BECO when the side core shut off, and doubling that to 16,000 kilometers per hour when the center core shuts off. So very, very fast, faster than we've seen before, I would imagine. A question here from Sam asking, Sawyer, I'll throw this one to you. Why doesn't SpaceX put parachutes or something like that on expended boosters to at least try and recover some stuff? Would it be cheaper?
At this point, I mean, SpaceX has their recovery procedure down to a T, it seems like, with over 100 successful landings in a row between the drone ships as well as the landing zones, both at Vandenberg and here at the Cape. So they've got that part down. And in addition, you're also adding more weight too. It is a heavy booster. Parachute adds weight. And SpaceX has tried this before for the first two Falcon 9s, and according to Alex, they both broke. So, yeah, you go with what you know works, and in this case, the rate that they're manufacturing boosters and the rate at which they're able to refurbish others, I don't think you even need to recover them, which is, I guess, what SpaceX believes on this too.
A good point here from David asking. Now, Max, I'll throw this to you since you are in the field. How far away can Falcon be heard? It's overcast, so David doesn't think that they'll see it. But can the weather also impact like what can be heard, Max?
Yeah, absolutely. The volume can be the volume the volume of the noise can be amplified or de-amplified, or whatever the correct terminology is. The humidity of the air, the cloud cover, can have a direct impact on how the rocket sounds and how far you can hear it. I know here from the press site, it's probably going to be a pretty noisy day, especially for Falcon Heavy, because Heavy is noticeably louder than Falcon 9, of course, with 3 Falcon core stages all put together. So that in essence, basically, the more humid it is, and the thicker the air is, the easier the sound can be carried through the air, and the more it can be both heard and honestly felt, depending on what rocket is flying. So the weather does have a direct implication, and also the wind as well.
Yeah, so for this one, it seems like it's very likely Titusville Cocoa should be fine for the Falcon 9 portion at least. Beyond that, you may get a faint rumble, or you may get a little bit farther because, as you mentioned, the low cloud cover and the high humidity, which, oh my gosh, launches that are like that get very loud to the point of, as Max was mentioning, where it physically shakes your body. And Max, with this one, we should also get the VAB squeal since it's coming from pad 40, so you'll get all of the sound sensations.
There you go. Bouncing off.
We should, except for the RTLS sonic booms.
True, but
There
at
you
least you'll
go.
get it for the liftoff of 40.
A question here from No Commentary asking, is there any chance of lightning striking the rocket even with the 4 towers and the whole kind of lightning protection system that's on the pad? Sawyer, is there any chance of lightning getting in still?
Sorry, I can't answer. It says no commentary.
Ah.
The answer is it's always a potential. I mean, 99.9% of the time, your towers are going to do that because lightning likes to go for the highest object, the first thing that it can strike. So that's why the lightning towers, the lightning rods, or whatever systems you see are pretty much always taller than the vehicle. So it's possible, but highly unlikely. And in addition, they do keep an eye on the clouds and everything in the sky so that it doesn't fly through any clouds that could create static electricity and create lightning onto the vehicle. So we don't want a repeat of Apollo 12. And way back in the day, for those in the Ares 1 fan club, Ares 1X delayed a few times due to the rule of potentially making its own lightning called triboelectrification.
There you go. The only prototype of an orbital rocket that was doing an intended suborbital trajectory, and it got higher than Starship. And of course, there's nobody on board O3B mPower 3 and 4 today to flick SCE to Orc. So it's better that we don't try and cause any lightning upon ascent into the atmosphere. Thanks, Methane Man, for 10 gifted Red Team memberships, and we also have Carl becoming a Red Team member. Musical Wolves is asking, as Falcon Heavy is being expended, Sawyer, will this break the landing streak, or are expended flights not counted?
Oh, if that's the case, we would have broken the streak already. We've had a few recent launches where they have expended cores. There was one, I mean, the booster had flown for quite a while, and they just said, you know what, it's its time, and it flew its final mission and is now at the bottom of the Atlantic. So it would not break the streak. O3B, if it didn't land, would, but Falcon Heavy would not. And I should point out for those asking, because I've seen it asked, the one on your left right now, the single stick Falcon 9, that is the O3B mPower. That is the one launching in about 10 minutes. The one on the right at 39A, that is the Falcon Heavy carrying ViaSat 3 Americas.
And quickly, I'm just going to throw it over to shop.nasaspaceflight.com. You know it, you love it. We've had loads of different purchases in there over the last few weeks with the big shiny rocket, but we also have some wonderful metal prints of said big shiny rocket from all of our photographers down at Starbase. You can get these in a variety of sizes. They're very high quality, and of course the images and the photography talent on those metal prints is also of extremely high quality. Many different angles, many different colours, many different shapes and styles as well. You can see the beautiful methane flame bursting at the bottom of Super Heavy there. We've got some of when Starship was still on the pad, and we've of course got some of Falcon 9 as well, that RTLS one right there. And we've got a variety of different rocket manufacturers, all of that jazz. But of course we also have plenty on Starship. Whatever you fancy, shop.nasaspaceflight.com.
We O3B empower you to check out the site and see if there's anything you like.
And you are now muted by Michael. Thanks, Sawyer.
Hey, I was told to tune it back just for Starship, so I got to ease my way back in.
There you go.
Sorry, Michael.
Mike asking here, given that all Falcon Heavy cores will be expended, how far can SpaceX throttle down the center core or turn off center core engines until separation? Now, so I haven't really heard of engines being purposefully shut off in order to reduce throttle. I guess unless you count like the Starship suborbital hops, but what's the throttle ability, if that's even a word, of Falcon Heavy?
If you look very closely at Falcon Heavy, you can see the difference in thrust when it lifts off of the side cores versus the center core. There is a noticeable difference in the length of the flame, which has to do with that. But they're not going to shut any of the engines off. And again, the reason that they are expending a lot of this is the fact that, hey, we need that extra push. We need that extra oomph. So you're taking weight off the rocket with the fuel needed for landing and the legs. So then you might as well keep going at the same power so that you get that extra boost that you need.
Very nice. Sam also here, a good question here about the environmental effect of expending boosters, which is
I'm going to interrupt you really quick.
On,
Stage 1 engine chill is underway.
Thank you very much. Max, I'll throw this one to you. How is expending boosters going to impact the environment? Because I'll also add some kind of context here. Falcon is the only orbital class booster currently being recovered in general. So, yeah, Max, how does expending boosters impact the ocean environment that it could potentially impact?
Well, as you just said, SpaceX is the only company working on or actively flying a recoverable booster. And keep in mind also, for the longest time, and still today, launch providers are still expending their boosters out into the Atlantic Ocean. So it's nothing, really nothing out of the ordinary, dare I say. I mean, especially with all three cores going, it might be more tricky than usual. But I guess they will serve as artificial reefs at some point.
And Max, I'm going to let you head off now as we approach T-minus 5 minutes until the current scheduled liftoff time of O3B mPower 3 and 4 on Falcon 9 B1078. So good luck with the track, have fun, and fingers crossed everything still tracks towards a launch in 5 minutes' time. Quickly, I'm just going to head through some memberships and the like here. Tracy gifting a Red Team membership. Thanks very much for that, Tracy. And 5 being gifted by Super Steph. I think that's another one from you today. Thank you very much for the kind contributions. Jim, again, with a Red Team membership being gifted. Thank you very much for that. Stefan with the Super Chat here. And Musical Wolves, another brilliant question from Musical Wolves here, asking, will both be launched by the same launch team? Sawyer, what do we know about SpaceX's launch teams? Because this is the Cape, so they have a firing room on the Kennedy side, a launch and landing control center on the Cape side, but they're also controlled by Hawthorne. What's the deal with that?
I haven't heard the official answer, but from my understanding is that anything 39A Falcon Heavy wise, they typically go to the firing room, and 40 is its own crew over at the Space Force, kind of right near the museum there. So I haven't heard otherwise, unless someone else in the back channel has, but that's my understanding is the two separate. And again, the main control, as you mentioned, is at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne.
Sounds good. We are now approaching launch. The strongback has started to retract. That'll go back a little further at the time of liftoff, but it's going back only a couple of degrees now, as we are now under 4 minutes into count. I'm going to look through here for maybe one more question before we get into or approach the launch of the Falcon 9. Excuse me. Just looking through here quickly. Sawyer, quickly. Brian asking, could Slick 40 be upgraded into a heavy pad, or would that require a complete rebuild?
I mean, I guess it's possible, but it would require a lot of infrastructure changes, especially since right now they're working on adding the crew tower to Slick 40. So I don't see them doing that. Although, again, it does raise the question of where will landing zones go when SpaceX no longer has LZ1 and 2 or Slick 13, I believe it was.
Yeah. A bit of rejigging is going to be happening at the Cape over the next few years. Also considering Starship pads with new launch complexes, perhaps. And I've just heard that the LOX load is complete on the first stage, so we're still going for the launch at the moment in just under 3 minutes' time.
Yep. Again, you will see more venting and purging coming out from the lines, which is, again, emptying and clearing out all the lines once everything is done ahead of the liftoff and ahead of the strongback throwback, as opposed to its slight retract where it is at currently. And the rest of the smoky stuff you're seeing is condensation on the outside of the booster as the super chilled propellants hit the hot, humid Florida air.
Just over 2 minutes now. Getting close. Weather is still on our side for the moment. You can see in the background it's a bit murky. It's a bit humid. It's not the nicest Florida weather you will have ever experienced, but it's also visible, at least for now, from the press site looking down towards Space Launch Complex 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida.
You're hearing it's currently a watch item, the weather. Yeah, sorry for interrupting you there.
No problem, Sawyer. From the weather desk. Yeah, the second stage has now also completed its liquid oxygen being loaded, so we're fully loaded now for launch in just over 90 seconds time. But as Alex was just noting in the back channel, the weather is still being looked at, so yeah, no confirmation if the weather is currently go, but there's still a few more seconds for the range and SpaceX to decide if the weather is suitable for a launch of Falcon 9, just over 1 minute now.
Yeah, if I may, really quickly, the events we're expecting to see, 1 minute, that is when Falcon 9 will be in startup, when all the onboard computers take control. It's also when all the tanks are pressurized to flight pressure. And at T-minus 45 seconds is typically when we get the go from launch for the launch director, although they have pushed it to 30 seconds in the past, if they're watching an item such as the weather, like now.
Mm-hmm. Officially just got that confirmation that we are in startup now, so still counting down under a minute now until hopefully the first of 2 launches this evening from the Cape, O3B mPower 3 and 4 on Falcon 9 B1078. And we are go for launch from the launch director at T-minus 34 seconds and still counting down. Some venting still coming out of Falcon 9.
Engine ignition will start at T-minus 3 seconds, and you'll be able to see that by a very distinctive green flash that is called T-Tab, which helps light the engines.
Here we go, 15 seconds to go. That's the counting down to the latest launch time we got from SpaceX. 10 seconds. Counting down now, 5. There's the ignition. And we have liftoff of Falcon 9 carrying O3B mPower 3 and 4 up into space from Slick 40. Let's listen in for the engines. 65 seconds into flight. We've got the call out. We're in supersonic now for Falcon 9. You can really hear the rumble of those Merlin 1D engines. 9 of them under Falcon 9 B1078, powering the vehicle up into orbit now. That humidity in the Floridian air really helping to amplify that sound from the bottom of the booster.
We're now at max Q. That is the maximum aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle, so basically when Falcon 9 experiences the most stress on it.
Next up, we'll be seeing MECO, and then hopefully the return of booster B1078.
I love seeing the plume expand there, which again is a result of the atmosphere thinning out.
Falcon 9 still audible there for a few more seconds from the Cape as it now heads downrange. The curvature of the Earth becoming ever more visible as Falcon 9 ascends, now nearly 40 kilometers in altitude. And only, may I say, a measly 5,500 kilometers per hour. We're going to be expecting much faster speeds with Falcon Heavy later on.
We are now 15 seconds away from 3 events in quick succession, which is MECO, as you mentioned, main engine cutoff. The first and second stages will separate, and then the second engine will start, all within the matter of about 10 seconds.
Here we go. First moment, or first point in that timeline coming up now very quickly. Main engine has cut off. The second stage will now be pushed away. There we go. And the ignition of that second stage Merlin vacuum engine. There we go. Second stage with both payloads is now heading off into space, whilst the Falcon 9 will turn around, get the grid fins out, and get ready for re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. Shortly, we'll also be seeing the fairings separate on the second stage. One of them has flown for 3 times already, the other for 4.
We'll be expecting that
There's some
in less than
beautiful
10
shots
seconds.
here in the afternoon.
Oh, it's beautiful. Even with the clouds, it's
very
still
cloudy,
lifted off,
but also very pretty. And excuse me, the fairings now separating off the second stage. They'll be drifting back towards the Atlantic.
Of which there
On the
is
left, you can see you can actually see the Falcon. You can see the fairing there behind the plume of the second stage there, just shortly.
and a reminder, SpaceX does have vehicles that are out there that can recover the fairings, which are dropped into the ocean via parachute.
Looks as if the booster is now pretty much perpendicular with the surface of the Earth. It's still traveling upwards. You can see its velocity is decreasing currently. Its altitude is increasing, so it's still coasting upwards. It is yet to start falling back towards Earth. But it will be coasting like this for a short while before starting to point itself retrograde backwards to the direction in which it is traveling. So it will be ready for the entry burn.
Everything
Beautiful
looking
clouds
good.
over the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, I do want to point out those little puffs that you see. Those are the thrusters, the cold gas thrusters that are helping to steer the vehicle while it's out of the atmosphere. And then those grid fins, which look like waffles and always make me hungry, those are what will help steer it once it gets back into the thicker atmosphere.
Very big waffle maker indeed, Sawyer. I'm not sure you'd be able to put the waffle mixture in there, clamp it, and then be able to eat that in one sitting. Those grid fins, although they may look small on your phone screens right now, are massive, and on Starship they're even bigger. So here we go then. The altitude has now begun decreasing. The speed is increasing for stage 1 as it currently targets the drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean, which for today's flight of the Falcon 9 is just read the instructions.
And again, that entry burn is expected to last 22 seconds to help slow it down. And you'll be able to see how dramatic the speed changes in the bottom left.
Yeah, you can really see those engines will ignite, boom, speed starts dropping. Very noticeable. And because it's increasing at the moment, because it has started to fall back towards Earth, you can see it now, the booster now orienting itself retrograde. It's pointing backwards. It's going engines first into the atmosphere. It will be fighting fire with the ignition of a selected few of the Merlin 1D engines that are under the first stage. Very clear view of the cold gas thrusters firing there, helping to orient the Falcon 9 in the correct position for entry back into the atmosphere. And the entry burn has now begun. There you go. Beautiful shots there from Falcon as it descends back into the Earth's atmosphere.
At this point,
you
the
can see
camera
that
may
kind
start
of
to get a little darker there. That is the soot from the carbon-based RP-1 that is flying through. That's if the camera gets a little dirty and sooty, that's why.
You can also see the plume is much more straight. There's through as it's now shut down actually, but it's a bit of a straight line because it is a straight line of engines firing. You can also see the grid fins now really doing their job, helping to like literally steer the booster through the atmosphere. Only 4 compared to the booster, 4 little grid fins, but they could do a huge amount in kind of dog-legging the booster over to the landing pad, which for today's flight is a drone ship in the Atlantic. And unfortunately, it did look as if SpaceX has lost connection to the Falcon 9 there. But we can continue to follow the second stage as it heads up into its targeted orbit, a medium Earth orbit, carrying 2 satellites, O3b mPower 3 and 4. Fingers crossed we'll get the booster back just before landing.
Yeah, so far the speeds are looking right about where they should be from past launches. And a reminder, the second engine cutoff, SECO 1, will happen before the first stage landing. So we'll keep an eye out for the MVAC engine to shut down after about 8 minutes, and then the landing burn will start about 20 seconds after that.
And I've just heard that the second stage is now cut off. And the parking orbit for the second stage is as intended. Here comes the landing burn. Look out for the drone ship in the Atlantic. We'll soon see the landing legs getting deployed. Just read the instructions. Is the target. Falcon 9 is locked on. Here come the landing legs. And right on the X. Beautiful touchdown by booster B. I lost the number. 1078.
Yep, officially getting a -2 on it, so now it'll be -3 for its next flight.
Doesn't look like we're getting any fiery burps today like we did with the mission out of Vandenberg.
Never
All
heard it
looks
called
good
that,
from
but
the
I
drone
like it.
ship. That's what Alicia called it on This Week in Spaceflight. There you go. Plug in there as well. So there you go. Just over 9 minutes into flight of O3B mPower 3 and 4. 1078 is now departed Slick 40. This is Data's favourite view on launch day. An empty pad on the left, but over on the right, a not empty pad because Falcon Heavy is still counting down to its launch of the ViaSat 3 America's payload and some other ones sprinkled in the payload fairing as well. Just over an hour until that one is currently scheduled to depart historic Launch Complex 39A. But at least for the teams working on Slick 40, their job's done for the day. Now it's over to the mission control team who will be monitoring the second stage of Falcon 9 as it starts to push the customer payloads into the intended medium Earth orbit. All 3.5 tons of payload on that Falcon 9. And yeah, that looks that was a pretty cool launch, wasn't it, Sawyer?
Oh, that was beautiful. And yeah, there are still 2 more engine lights for this mission. The second stage at T plus 27 minutes, and then a third second stage burn at T plus 1 hour, 50 minutes. So there's still a lot to go, but that, never gets old. Still beautiful, still gorgeous. And yeah, the streak continues for those who are wondering about the landings.
There you go. No worry there. I was waiting for the drone ship to appear, and it just kind of morphed out of underneath the Falcon. So SpaceX has really nailed the orientation in terms of rotation for landing the Falcons. So we get those beautiful shots of the drone ship as it descends upon the Atlantic, and yeah, wonderful launch as always, and bang on the money as we've come to expect now from SpaceX with the workhorse Falcon 9. It is the most successful commercial rocket flying today. It is the rocket that we kind of now come to think of when we think rocket. Maybe not. Sawyer, would it be unfair to call Falcon? If the space shuttle still wins, would it be unfair to call Falcon 9 a bit bland? It's just become it's become so regular now. It's wonderful to see it becoming regular, but it also makes it maybe a teeny bit less special, perhaps.
Is it unfair? Yes and no. I mean, yeah, a rocket launch is still always the potential for danger. There's always a controlled explosion, literally going, 20,000 kilometers plus per hour here. So it's not nothing to blink an eye at, but anytime I talk to people about launches and everything, it's always just, oh, all right, is that another Starlink on the Falcon again? So it's unfortunately starting to get to that shuttle era. It's another shuttle launch. In this case, it's another Falcon launch, especially for Starlinks. But to me, it's always still exciting.
I'm just going to run through a bit of contribution we got during the launch of Falcon 9, which launched just over 12 minutes ago. Thanks to Marcus for upgrading to Capcom. You now get access to the Discord server. We have Kat gifting 5 Red Team memberships. And we have Austin buying off the store. Thanks very much for that, Austin. Saying, I guess it's a concrete way to support the NSF team after the Starship FFT.
I love it.
Thanks very much for purchasing off the store, Austin. Kenneth with the super chat as well. Thanks very much for that. Saying they met you, Sawyer, at Yuri's night.
Oh, yes. I remember. It was great chatting with you for a while there. We talked for quite a bit.
Sappod gifting 10 Red Team memberships. Thanks very much for that. JC with the 5 USD. Thanks very much for that as well. Kat with another gifted set of memberships. 5 Red Team memberships. Thanks very much. And we also have Zeta gifting, not gifting, super chatting. Thank you very much for that as well. Everything very much greatly appreciated. Peter becoming a Pad Rat member, also greatly appreciated. Thanks to everybody who's helping to contribute and keep things going. It's a big help. But of course, if you just want to watch, just want to share our content with your friends, with your family, it's all greatly appreciated, and it goes a very long way in helping YouTube to make us look a bit more promising. They then put us in the homepage, and more people click on us and get to catch the spaceflight bug, which, well, if you're watching this, you've probably caught already.
And it is contagious, and we like it that way.
So on the left, you can see the orbital track of the second stage, as it is now probably just over halfway across the Atlantic, currently heading towards Africa. It'll, of course, be flying over Africa. 14.
And a reminder that, I was going to say that next burn that we're expecting, which is called SES2, or Second Engine Start 2, is scheduled for about T plus 27 minutes, so about 13 minutes or less from right now.
And for those of you just joining us, we have already seen the launch of one of our potential launches this evening. Well, a confirmed launch for this evening. O3b mPower 3 and 4 on a Falcon 9 departed Slick 40 just under 15 minutes ago now. However, on the right side of your screen, we're still waiting just over an hour until we see a Falcon Heavy launch yet again. This would be the second one this year, sorry if I'm remembering correctly, because USSF 44 was November, I think.
I believe it was October, November was 44, the Florida Vandenberg launch, and then USSF 67 was February, if I recall correctly. It was this year, and now next up is ViaSat 3, and there are still more planned for later on this year. Just pointing that out, including a really big science mission known as Psyche.
Yeah. Fingers crossed I'll be there to see that one if it doesn't get delayed again for a year and a half. But yeah, very excited to see Psyche on another Falcon Heavy. Yeah, me too, Sawyer. Me too. Fingers crossed it doesn't get. I'm not. I won't mention the S word just in case. But yeah, that's the second Falcon Heavy of the year on the right side of your screen, getting ready for launch in 1 hour and 57 seconds time. As the second stage is still approaching second engine start 2, and then shortly after that will be second engine cutoff 2, just as it begins to tweak its orbit slightly for the deployment of the 2 payloads for SES.
Wait, can I point out something interesting fact-wise as we approach towards Falcon Heavy here as well?
Go for it, Sawyer.
This will now be our third Falcon Heavy launch in about 6 months. Prior to that, there was no Falcon Heavy launch for 2 years. Previous one before that being STP-2.
The drought of Falcon Heavy is something I can unfortunately remember and feel very, very well. It was almost. I'm not saying it was on the level of the first flight of Falcon Heavy when USSF 44 launched, but it definitely gave me the chills to see such a powerful rocket launch yet again. And of course, since then we've also had SLS and Starship take the title for the king of the operational rockets. But yeah, Falcon Heavy still a rocket that you should never doubt because it is extremely powerful.
And still does not disappoint if seen in person and confirm after 3 of them.
The double RTLS is kind of the trademark feature of Falcon Heavy now. Unfortunately, we will not be seeing this for ViaSat 3 launching in just under an hour's time, due to the payload requirements. A very, very heavy payload in the payload fairing for Falcon Heavy. Said heavy a lot, many times then. Did not think that sentence through. But yeah, no RTLS or recovery on the drone ship, for a matter of fact, for any of the boosters supporting this flight today for Falcon Heavy.
Would you say your sentence was heavy?
Oh, Sawyer.
You
Thanks for that,
volunteered to do
Sawyer.
the stream with me.
Yeah, yes, I did. Yeah. Alex noting in the back channel that the next Falcon Heavy is in roughly 2 months, and emphasis on the roughly because ViaSat 3, I think was supposed to launch like last summer, maybe. Falcon Heavies are definitely prone to slipping on the kind of the long-term schedule. It's not really on the short term. Once a launch date is set in stone, the Falcon Heavy goes for it, but it's more payload factors that long-term payload factors that delay Falcon Heavy launches, i.e., ViaSat 3, Psyche, and the Space Force missions as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, majority of the launch's delay was due to payload, not really the rocket itself. The only one that slightly delayed, and it was only by a couple hours, was the test flight, basically, that was rocket related and possibly weather. But yeah, a lot of it is payloads, and as you mentioned, Psyche had to wait over a year now because the satellite wasn't fully ready to launch on the Falcon Heavy, so they had to wait for the next transfer window to the asteroid Psyche. And yes, we're getting an update here momentarily on Falcon Heavy.
A new T0 time.
It is now 8:26 p.m. Eastern Time. Weather is now 70% favorable for liftoff, according to SpaceX.
Much better than the 30% favourable, which was predicted by Space Launch Delta 45, 45th Space Wing yesterday. So it has improved quite a lot. And we've obviously seen a successful launch so far with O3B mPower 3 and 4 on a Falcon 9. So fingers crossed its bigger brother, Falcon Heavy, will be able to perform a successful flight of that just as well.
Yeah, it had to. It saw the other one launch, and now it's got to have the launch fever like we all do.
Yeah, unfortunately, though, it has just delayed to just under 2 hours' time. However, fingers crossed that is for weather avoidance to not encounter any problems during ascent. As we were mentioning before, T0, Apollo 12, a very famous example of that. Rockets are pretty protected from lightning whilst they're on the pad. However, they are not very protected when they're ascending through the clouds. We've had a comment here from Elon Musk on Twitter, actually, saying, about to do a Falcon Heavy risk review. I love that rocket, but it's scary. So many state changes post-liftoff. Sawyer, what do you think?
And that's coming from the man who was also in the launch control for Starship, by the way. But yeah, I'm with him on that. It's always scary. As mentioned, there's a lot of different state changes, pressures, temperatures, uh, forces on the vehicle. And again, you're talking basically 3 Falcon 9s strapped together, essentially. So I'm interested to. I would be love to see exactly what's in that risk review. But yeah, let's hope that they go for the new T0.
A question here from Keith. Sorry, I'll throw this to you. How soon could 39A Starship's mounts be ready? Could the next Super Heavy Starship launch be from Florida? What are we thinking about the 39A timeline? The pad you can see on your screen at the moment, Sawyer.
I think that's honestly going to depend on what happens down at Starbase. The Stage 0 took quite a beating, as we all know. So I think they're going to nail down everything at Starbase, make their mistakes there, rebuild all their towers, OLMs, whatever they need to fix, and keep doing testing a whole bunch of times. And then once they get that down pat, then they can look at the Tower 39A and go, okay, what changes do we need to make now after we've gotten it successfully flying out of Texas? So I think it's still going to be a little bit, and the main factor that we'd be waiting on is Starbase.
And actually, also on the channel, because we love to give you as much content as possible, we have a show with the Intrepid Sea, Air and Space Museum up in New York with Mike Massimino, Nicole Scott, and Dr. Cyan Proctor. So if you'd like to watch that, whilst also keeping this stream open in the background, that is also available to you as well.
I'd like to point out, for those who are unaware, all 3 of them are astronauts. Mike Massimino worked to repair the Hubble Space Telescope. Nicole Stott did art in space, in addition to having a long duration stay, I believe, on the ISS. And Dr. Cyan Proctor was the first black pilot of a vehicle aboard the Inspiration 4 mission, and she also did watercolors in space. So it's a show that it's definitely worth having on that second monitor as you keep an eye on Falcon Heavy, because they are amazing, amazing speakers, and I'm proud to say friends with all of them, so you will enjoy it.
A wonderful bunch of people as well. Put them on the telly. Keep us on your phone in the background. Don't let us go anywhere. but also get that show open as well. A very interesting bunch of people, which you would also not want to miss. We're still approaching the second engine start for O3B mPower 3 and 4 overhead Africa right now. And you can kind of see there the white line around the Earth is the current trajectory for the second stage. The blue line is the targeted trajectory, and you can see it kind of diverts from the white line there, just over the coast there of Africa. So that is that point where the second engine is intending to ignite its Merlin vacuum once again for the second of 3 engine lights, I believe, on this mission, Sawyer.
Correct.
There you go. Just taking the tick away, so it's a little bit more visible. You can see that blue line diverging from the white line. Current trajectory compared to targeted trajectory. That's going to be happening in about 3 minutes' time. That happening just before reaching the coast of, I think that's probably roughly Gabon there, or Equatorial Guinea, that kind of region of the world.
Yeah, Central Africa.
The MVAC, usually around this time, oh, the map just went back. Around this time, the MVAC engine will be undergoing a bit of chill down to get ready for that. And SpaceX actually just said that they've acquired signal in Gabon, so that might be the reason for that switch there, going from simulated telemetry to actual telemetry being downlinked live from the second stage of Falcon 9.
And right now it should also be using its gas thrusters to help kind of settle the propellants inside. You don't want the fuel sloshing around, causing things to go off balance, pogo, anything like that. So it's just another final step to ensure that you hit the burn exactly where you need to and when you need to.
Second stage, 180 kilometers in the sky, going just shy of 27,000 kilometers per hour. Sawyer, do we expect them to change any much with this engine burn, or are we just going to see the inclination of the orbit, the angle of the orbit change a little bit with this burn?
I mean, there's always going to be a slight change in doing that, so we'll have to keep an eye on it and see exactly how much. And it's different for each payload depending on how long of a burn and, again, where you're placing it in orbit.
Just going to look through here quickly, see if we've got any more interesting questions that have come in, such as this one from Pavan asking, why is the interstage not black on this Falcon Heavy? Sawyer, interstages. Give us all the details on interstages, the wonderful world of interstages.
Well, they are inter the stages, so between them. But in this case, the reason for said interstage color, normally we're used to Falcon 9, which is a black colored interstage. But the one that you see that's silver all has to do with thermal. And we should be coming up on that engine burn here in just a second, and then I'll happily answer and we can take a look at it. But right now, let's focus on this, maybe video of the engine burn.
The signal might be a little bit spotty, or they're deciding not to show it to us for some reason. But there you go. We are approaching that point in the trajectories where they diverge from one another. White line is where... There we go. We had live views for a split second there. But there you go. White line where the second stage is currently going. Blue line where it wants to go.
There we go. Again, they are in space, so there is a chance of signal loss or things like that. But there's the T-Tab, like, and there's the light.
Here it goes. And you can see the glow of the second stage engine now increasing.
And the speed increasing in the bottom right as well.
There we go, thrashing through 28,000 kilometers per hour now, speeding up to nearly 29,000, and the altitude increasing slightly there as well from about 180, 181 kilometers up to 185 kilometers now. But remember, that is rounded to the nearest kilometer, so give or take a few meters in there, it's not exactly the altitude of the second stage. And
hopefully the numbers that SpaceX has are more precise.
Yes, and the second stage engine being cut off there, you can see the glow reducing a little bit before we lost the second stage camera there. We have a nominal insertion according to SpaceX, just shy of 31,000 kilometers an hour, up to 188 kilometers in altitude. Second stage now targeting its third burn. Sawyer, do we know when that third burn will be for the second stage on this mission?
We absolutely do. That third burn will happen at T plus 1 hour, basically 1 hour 50 minutes, a couple seconds before that. That burn is scheduled to last 28 seconds. And then about 3 minutes after that will be the first satellite deployment, and then 7 minutes later will be the second satellite deployment.
And joining us now in the field, ready for Falcon Heavy, we have a Julia. Hey Julia, how you doing?
Why, hello there. I am doing well. We are all set up again, just in a slightly different location for Falcon Heavy. And it looks like I will be your tracker for this launch.
Very exciting indeed. Were you out in
Isn't
the
it?
field when we saw the Falcon 9 go, or were you not there yet?
I was here. I was enjoying the view and the sound and helping out Max wherever he needed it.
Did you hear the
Sounds
sonic
brilliant.
squeal?
Oh, yes, I heard the sonic squeal. Absolutely. I bet
love
you
that.
that sonic squeal is going to be amazing with 3 cores.
Oh.
And yeah, that's
Fortunately,
gonna be...
we normally only hear it with the cores though on an RTLS landing, but
Yeah. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed we get some sort of VAB squeal. And also joining us, we have Mr. Alex. Full name I'm not going to try pronounce in fear of butchering it horribly. But how you doing, Alex?
One day I'll try and make you get it right. But yeah, I'm doing really great here, waiting for them to, start off with that feeling for Falcon Heavy and just what about should be 50 minutes. Yeah. There we go.
Yeah. Hopefully the time doesn't change anymore, because we did have a delay of approximately an hour for ViaSat 3. If you're just joining us again and you're saying, wow, that time is much bigger than it was last time I checked in, that's the reason. Pushed for weather, about 70% favorability for the time they're currently targeting for Falcon Heavy, in just shy of an hour and 45 minutes. But for the moment, for the coast phase of O3B mPower 3 and 4, and in the lead up to Falcon Heavy, I'm going to be bowing out. I'll be Ryan Caton, and in my place, Sawyer is going to be looking for some questions and doing all of that jazz. So take it away, Sawyer.
thank you. I hope you still are Ryan Caton after you get off too.
Thanks, Sawyer.
He's trying to run away from my jokes as fast as possible. I don't blame him.
Yes, I am. I'm off. Bye.
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 Oh, well, again, as you can see on your screen there on the left is the continuation of the O3B mPower 3 and 4 mission. And on your right is the Falcon Heavy that will be carrying ViaSat 3 Americas, along with a few other payloads alongside it. So while we got a fresh start here, Alex, I'm going to pass it off to you first. What
Sure.
exactly is this payload, ViaSat 3 Americas, and what else is on board? Because I believe there's multiple little payloads too.
Oh boy, it is a big satellite. I believe we have a picture there to show in just a moment, but it's one of these huge comsats that they put on geostationary orbit. And the ViaSat 3 America satellites, it's actually part of 3 satellites that ViaSat is going to be launching. One of them, this one, ViaSat 3 Americas, is to cover North and South America, hence the name. And then they're going to have one that is going to be for the Middle East and Asia, and then another one for the Pacific. So they're going to be able to cover the whole Earth with that constellation of ViaSat 3 satellites. And you can see there, it's a big satellite. You see there sort of on the side, that is a deployable antenna. So they're going to have like this big antenna in order to be able to have high bandwidth connectivity for all of their operations for this satellite in particular for the Americas. But the other 2 are similar to this one, and they'll cover other parts of the globe as well. So once they have that whole constellation, they plan to most of the Earth, they say 90 to 99%. We'll see, but yeah, it's a big chunk of the Earth that they will be able to cover with those 3 satellites, and this is the first one. And the other 2 payloads, because this is not the only one that is flying today on Falcon Heavy, hopefully, is the other 2 are the Astranis Arcturus satellite, also called Aurora 4A, in some other places as well. That other satellite is much smaller. It's a small satellite, but still big. It's about I think it is 700 kilograms, if I remember correctly. So it's still a decent size payload, but it's obviously not this big bus-sized payload. And that is also sort of an internet satellite kind of thing that they're going to be launching. It's not as big and as high bandwidth because it doesn't have like this big antenna that it's going to be communicating like the ViaSat 3 satellite. But the Arcturus satellite is still going to be providing that, especially for the Pacific in Alaska and in places like that. They already have contracts for that as well. And then the other payload is a CubeSat. It's a 12, I think it is a 12-unit CubeSat, which I believe it is like 20 kilograms. It's very tiny compared to this big, massive, even to the other small satellite. That one is from G-Space, and there's not a lot of information about that satellite in particular, but it appears to also be about, internet connectivity as well, just at a much smaller scale.
And by the way, it's a whole whopping 22 kilograms for
Yeah,
that
22. There we
small
go.
satellite. Yeah, you were very close on that. It's compared to the massiveness of the ViaSat 3 America satellite, it seems kind of laughable, but hey, you take a ride on whatever vehicle you can get, right?
Yep.
Speaking of the vehicle, as you may notice, this one looks kind of funny. Julia, what is the history of the boosters aboard this Falcon Heavy?
Well, let's call it the Franken Heavy because it's rather patchwork, as you can see. So we have all expendable, and B1052, this will be its 8th flight, and it started off with a Falcon Heavy, Arabsat 6A, and then went to STP2. After that, it became basically one of the Falcon 9 Block 5 conversions, which was pretty awesome to see, and it's going to have its final flight yet again on a Falcon Heavy. So we've got 5.2 and then 5.3. This is actually only its 4th flight, and it has, or no, I'm sorry, 3rd flight. And it has only been on Arabsat 6A and STP2. So 3rd flight, 8th flight, and then a center core, which this is its one and only flight. Hence the patchwork. We've got very sooty, kind of sooty, and very clean.
Yeah, that is a good way to put it, Franken Heavy. It looks so bizarre. I think first off, it's bizarre without landing legs, and then add in the different sootiness. Yeah, I don't know if that's a word or not, but it is now.
Oh, have we covered? Ooh, go ahead, Julia.
Well, I was just going to say too, it's not often we see the series of 50s flying anymore, because we are up in the booster numbers ending in the 70s. So it's a treat when we see something like 5.8 with the worm, right? Which, yeah.
Yeah, for reference, yeah. 78 just launched the O3B mission.
Exactly. So this is basically the watery retirement for some of our older boosters. And remember, a lot of these older boosters, although this one maybe only is going to end with 3 flights, these were ones that were first in some of their categories, first to be run multiple times as a Falcon. And be a workhorse and then convert back. So learning those processes also could potentially put additional stress on the boosters and impact their life.
Alex, you were going to say something?
Yeah, so have you covered which booster is which already?
We have
this
not.
Is easy
because which is which?
Have
not. Because Falcon Heavy has 3 boosters, but which one is which? Because the side boosters, in theory, they can be interchanged. Like they could be the one closer to the tower or the one further away from the tower. So for this one, it's actually easier because one has flown more times than the other, so it's more sooty, and it's very straightforward to identify. But still, we like to do that, right? We did that for the previous 2 Falcon Heavy, so why not? So for this flight, the booster closer to the tower is the most sooty, and that is B1052, has launched 7 times prior to this mission. This is going to be its 8th time. It launched 2 times as a Falcon Heavy side booster, also in that same position on Falcon Heavy for Arabsat 6A and STP2. It launched as, the booster that is closer to the tower as well. So it's going to be flying the same configuration, But the only difference is that in between, it flew 5 times as a Falcon 9 booster. And it actually flew with B-1049's interstage while it was flying as a Falcon 9 booster. And so for this mission, it had to, be removed from its old interstage and had the new, what is potentially a new nose cone installed for this one. And the other side booster, the one further away from the tower, that is B-1053, also launched those 2 Falcon Heavy missions, Arabsat 6A and STP-2 with this side booster, but it was not converted into a Falcon 9 and has been basically sitting idle for 4 years until this mission came, and now it's back to launch for a third and last time. So there you go.
More you know. Stefan Batiste, thank you very much for the support. Can't wait till my plushie arrives. Merch plug, ! Plushie. Thank you for that. Snot Garden, a heavy launch indeed. Thanks for the best commentary in the biz. We appreciate that. Thank you. John Dopeker, thank you for the 5 gifted Red Team memberships. Thank you as well, John, for upgrading to a Launch Director member, one of our higher ones here. Fantastic. And then we also have a few questions here. I'm going to put this one to Julia, who is the queen of Port Canaveral, is phenomenal when it comes to all of the recovery things. Rasmus is asking, could SpaceX in theory land 2 boosters on one drone ship?
Ooh, no. I mean, is there enough deck space? Quite possibly, but you would have to do quite a ballet with the angle of landing, and making sure that the legs, which obviously are missing on these boosters, just pointing that one out, but you'd have to do quite a dance to get the angle of landing correct to get the legs to not intertwine. And then you would also need 2 octograbbers on board to secure them for the ride home. That could also potentially make it a little bit rockier getting home, trying to keep all of that balanced on deck, especially if rougher weather comes in.
Exactly. And if you don't follow Julia and her socials, you absolutely should. She has some fantastic photography of all the different boosters and things coming back into port and the work that's done to get these reflown. It's absolutely phenomenal. So please make sure you follow her. Here's a question from Elmad, and I'll send this one to you, Alex. Can you explain how the diverters on these pads are designed? And I guess they're trying to tie that into what we've seen with Starship. But how does the flame diverters work, at least for Falcon Heavy here on 39A?
I'm not sure because they don't really show that. I'm not even sure because I know after the shuttle was retired, the sort of all of the infrastructure was sort of left there for 39A. So I'm not sure what else has SpaceX done in terms of taking hardware from the shuttle era or refurbished, like completely renew things or install a new diverter or something like that. Not fully sure, to be honest. But for Slick 40, I do think they have a flame diverter that is water cooled. So that thing of water cooling something is not new for SpaceX. It's very similar in fashion to the big one that they have at McGregor, which you can watch at McGregor Live, by the way. They have also a big flame diverter there with a trench and everything to divert all of the flames. And that one is also water cooled. So the one for Slick 40 and the one that they use at McGregor, I know they have flame diverters there and they use water cooled flame diverters. And it is because it's the way, it's way easier. It doesn't degrade or anything. And it tolerates a lot the heat and pressures without needing an even higher and an even bigger flame diverter. The reason why Starship doesn't have one, well, it started having one. There are old, designs and pad renders and things like that where it shows a big flame diverter and paperwork also talking about that. We saw them starting to build one, and then plans changed. So probably they found out something that they didn't want to deal with for Starship, so they bite the bullet, and well, we see what happened, right? So, yeah.
Exactly. A reminder, you can tag us at NASASpaceflight in chat, and we will do our best to answer as many of your questions as possible, including a question like this one from Ben Sharp asking, what would happen if both the Falcon 9 and the Falcon Heavy launch at the same time? Would they affect each other in any way? And Julia, I'm going to throw that to you because I think it has a lot more to do with the range than the rockets.
Oh, yeah. Well, so as far as readiness for the range, you know how we see in the movies, uh, how we like to think we can send up like a dozen rockets all from the same place all at once? Well, science fiction is kind of sort of science reality in a weird way now. Would we send two at the same time? No, but can we send them back to back? Absolutely. The range is ready to do that. There's kind of a tooling that happens sometimes between different launch providers and their hardware. But with SpaceX having their flight termination system in the rocket and how it communicates with CAPE, we can definitely support, they call it T-0. And the range was ready back in December to try to do this. So I'm looking forward to more opportunities this year to smash our former Titan record or our former Gemini record, because that's even closer to movie reality.
Yeah, as you mentioned, they were prepared for a potential 33-minute turnaround between launches, which didn't happen. But yeah, as Julia mentioned, they are getting quicker and quicker, but the record still currently goes to Gemini 12 and the Agena vehicle that they would rendezvous and dock with in orbit, which was 1 hour and 39 minutes. Meaning, if this had gone at the top of the window for Falcon Heavy, it would have broken the Cape record. But unfortunately, given the later T0 now, it will not. But it'll be very, very close, and it will still be SpaceX's record for fastest time between launches.
One thing that I tried to check out here, because they also have a sort of a record, you could say, for 3 launches in a row. And I was trying to look that up, but I think they are not breaking that one because they had a launch yesterday, I believe it was. Because they have so many launches these days that it's hard to track. But I do believe they had a launch yesterday, and so that will be 3 launches in pretty much, I think it is 36 hours or something like that. But I think the current record is something of around 31. So they're not going to break the record for 3 launches, but they're going to be very close.
Yes, and I believe the SpaceX record currently at the Cape was 23 hours between launches in Florida. So,
Hey, Alex, I have a question. So if
Yeah.
the Cape is ready to support that, and SpaceX can get 3 rockets on the pad simultaneously, right? You got 40, 39, and then Vandy. How does SpaceX handle that with their, for instance, their control room teams? Do you think they have like multiple shifts? Because that's something down the road. Do you have multiple shifts, or are people just assigned to a specific launch and we then set up another person at that same spot and move on to the next?
I do think they have different shifts for launch control. They also have different groups of launch control teams. Especially at the Cape, they have 2 launch control rooms. They have, I think it is Fire Room 4 at the Kennedy Space Center, and then at the Cape, they have the old and trusted Launch and Landing Control Center by the South Gate. And yeah, the thing is, from what I've heard at least, Vandenberg launches are also controlled. The launch control, at least, it is also from Florida. So they don't have like some sort of local launch control team or something like that. They do have people for like handling the Falcon 9 and the payloads and everything. But I guess once they start with Complex 6, Space Launch Complex 6, because that was sort of one of the news this week, which you can watch on This Week in Spaceflight, because we have that now running all Fridays. Yeah, so once that comes up, I guess they're going to have a local control room for launches. Because then they have also mission control, which is at Hawthorne, that controls sort of the missions. But they also have like different rooms as well at Hawthorne. It's not just one single room. So it's like, Yeah, they're gonna have to need a lot of control rooms, both for launch, for mission, for for 1,000 things.
Isn't that true? Oh man, as we are continuing to wait here for the ViaSat 3 launch, at this point we are continuing countdown. We are hearing that so far things are proceeding. Again, going to, I believe it's 8:26 p.m. Eastern Time, which is the end of the launch window for this particular mission. Let's see. I think there may be another event going on that we will keep an eye on too, that is also spaceflight related. I believe there is an event going on right now with astronauts, and it's being hosted by our very own Das. He's down there at the Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum in New York City. So if you haven't checked it out yet, that is also on our channel here at NASA Spaceflight. Make sure you pull that up and put it onto a second monitor and watch alongside as we continue to answer your questions here related to Starship, and as the astronauts over there continue to answer questions about what it's like doing art in space. It's really, really cool, I gotta say. A huge shout out to the team over at the Intrepid as well. We are also hearing really quickly, I do want to mention Elon Musk with a short tweet saying Falcon Heavy is green for launch, although on our screen it just looks brown and sooty. Speaking of which, speaking of the color of the rocket, there's that weird silver stripe kind of on the inner stage area. What exactly is that for? Why is it different color when it's normally black on, say, the Falcon 9 that just launched?
Is it black? Should be white.
Or white, excuse me. Yeah. Well, we normally say black and white. This is a gray area, literally. So.
Oh God.
Anyway, the reason.
Yeah, I can give that. So the second stage is gonna perform 2 burns. So it's actually 3. Sorry. The first burn is gonna be a very short burn to insert the payloads into a preliminary orbit, and then from that parking orbit, it's gonna do a second burn to put them into a geostationary transfer orbit, that is called. And at apogee, so it's gonna take about 4 hours to get there. It's not technically entirely going to geostationary. It's about 1,200 kilometers below that, but still it's very close, right? So it's gonna take a long while. It's gonna take about 4 hours to get there. And once it gets there, it's gonna burn again. It's gonna basically circularize the orbit, and then also reduce the inclination of the orbit to 0 to near equatorial. So they're gonna leave the second stage is gonna leave those 3 satellites into a very near geostationary orbit. Now the problem is, in those 4 hours, the second stage is gonna be either on daylight or shadow or something like that. So it's gonna be having weird thermal conditioning there, right? And the liquid oxygen, they can control that, the thermal conditioning, the temperature and everything, by regularly venting and by a process that is called adiabatic cooling. It basically cools down and it doesn't boil off a lot. And but the problem with the RP1 is that it can freeze with the conditions in space, or at least portions of it might freeze. So in order to avoid that, they paint that gray paint onto the second stage in order to be able to attract more sunlight, basically. So that's the reason for that gray paint, just to get a little bit hotter, and so that the RP1 doesn't get too cold for the MVAC engine to function in space. Because even if it doesn't freeze, if it gets too cold, it might be, different viscosity or things like that. Like it can become too viscous to run through the engine. So you don't want that stuff to happen, right? So having that nice gray band just allows the second stage to keep its RP1 very warm and nice.
Yeah, a reminder, you're talking, it's a little higher up, so it may be a little longer, but approximately 45 minutes in orbital night, 45 minutes in orbital day, at least for the station. Higher orbits, that's obviously going to be a little bit longer on each end, but regardless, that's a long, that's a lot of temperature changes in a very short amount of time. So if you're up there for 4 hours, you need that extra protection there. All right, let's see. Here's a question for Julia. Lil King asking, will the booster fall back to burn up in the atmosphere? So, Julia, since this doesn't have landing legs, what's the plan for those two side cores?
Those two side cords are going to crash in the ocean and break up. So instead of a boost back burn, now correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, but instead of a boost back burn, we are just going to have a little burn to kind of send them on their correct trajectory to the designated landing zone far, far offshore, where literally they, much like Starship was planned to do, it's going to break up in the ocean. It's going to have a hard impact. Now, although we are talking about expendability today, there is there is something that will be recovered. And this is actually a really cool fact that Gavin posted. So the final downrange distance today for Doug, which is recovering the fairing halves, is 1,960 kilometers to
Whoa.
recover these fairings. That's how far we are yeeting this load. And that is more than 400 kilometers than the previous record of a fairing retrieval. So I hope when we talk about yeeting, I hope that when these fairings do come down, they come down well controlled and their little parafoils deploy and they have a soft enough landing. But just like a booster that gets yeeted, it's possible these fairings might have a little bit rougher ride down than normal.
And whatever happens, because probably SpaceX won't tell right away, or maybe they do, because it's probably a special case here of a very high reentry speed. But in case they don't, or either way, I should say, you should check out Space Coast Live for when they come back, because we're going to be looking for those when they come back. You can bet that we're going to be looking for those. I believe it's going to take you like a week. It's so far away that it's going to take a long time to come back, right, Julia?
With it being that far out, oh gosh, it's going to take them 5-6 days, because when we're talking booster recovery, although boosters come back a little slower, because of it's a barge, but it could take probably 5, possibly 6 days to come back from there.
Yeah, so we'll definitely be looking that on Space Coast Live with a fleet cam camera at port and see what Doug brings. Maybe intact fairing halves, maybe some broken, we'll see. Hopefully intact.
Maybe for May the 4th, SpaceX will treat us to some plasma burn views from the fairings as a video. That would be awesome. Just saying.
That would be cool. Yeah.
Oh, that would be
SpaceX,
amazing.
if you're listening,
By the way, I would like to address the fact that we still have 2 countdown clocks on the screen. The bottom one is for this Falcon Heavy ViaSat 3. The other is for what you're seeing right now, the O3B mPower. That Falcon 9 just lifted off from Space Launch Complex 40 a little under an hour ago, and the mission is still not yet complete.
Look at that altitude.
It's unbelievable. Wow. And they still have a whole nother burn of the second stage called SES-3, which is second engine start 3. That'll happen about T plus 1 hour, 50 minutes after liftoff, and that is about a 28-second burn. And then the rest of the satellites, the 2 of them that are on board, will deploy over the course of the 10 minutes following that burn. So we are still keeping an eye on that, which, again, lifted off, and you saw it right here on NSF. For Alex, and may need a little explanation behind it as well. Daniel Hogbin asking, is this one of the new stubby MVAC nozzles?
Oh, no. You're not going to see that today, because both missions are very demanding for Falcon 9. So the stubby nozzle, what it happens to the rocket engine is that it performs less. It has less ISP, basically specific impulse. That's sort of like the economy of the engine, right? The millage, so to speak. And so the engine is less efficient. It also produces less thrust as well. So that kind of nozzle, the stubby nozzle, is used only on missions where Falcon 9 in general doesn't really need all of that performance. So when they have plenty of room to spare on the performance, they do that. They're going to be using that stubby nozzle. One of the upcoming missions that will use that, for example, is CRS-28. It's a cargo mission to the ISS. That one is going to use that because of the same reason, because they don't need as much performance. For that mission, they in fact used to do a boost back burn on the first stage and return not back to land, but to a drone ship much closer to shore. So what they're going to be doing for that mission instead is they're going to eat that performance back into that stubby nozzle, so to speak, right? And they're going to have the booster just landing downrange without any boost back burn and be, the usual 600, 700 kilometer downrange distance for booster landings instead of that closer to shore. So yeah, that's what you should expect. These two missions, though, they are not in that category. They are very demanding missions for both Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. So you're not seeing that kind of nozzle on either of these missions.
There we go. We have a few super chats here. Want to thank Plutonium239 saying, when are they going to upgrade the Falcon Heavy? And I think the answer is probably minor tweaks, but nothing major at this point, given that, again, the Falcon 9 is pretty much set in stone with just the occasional minor tweaks. I don't see them changing Falcon Heavy anytime soon, do you?
Hey, yeah, the Falcon Heavy is pretty much maxed out right now. They do some slight upgrades, but not upgrades, but more like they change things here and there to Falcon 9. So if I've been talking about the stubby nozzle for missions that do not require the full performance of the rocket, there are missions that not only require the full performance, but they even try to squeeze some of it from the rocket by staging faster, deploying the fairings even closer, to the ground and things like that. That is Starlink missions, which are their internal missions. But they do try to squeeze some more performance out of the rocket for Starlink missions. That is with Falcon 9, obviously. So don't expect Falcon Heavy upgrades, but again, it's not all set in stone. There's some probably changes can still happen, but very, very minor changes though.
Exactly. Let's see. We have Mark Eason, thank you very much for the support. Hatstand Destructor, thank you for the support as well. And Kimberly Fisher, I'll pose this question to Julia since we were kind of just talking about it. After liftoff, which direction will ViaSat 3 be heading? We'll be watching from Summerfield, Florida.
Based off of the map I saw for fairing recovering, we're going east. Am I correct?
Yep.
You are.
Alex?
Both missions
Okay, I was
are
say,
going east.
it looked like straight east again. So if you're out there trying to do a kind of a streak shot, remember, if you're on the coast of Titusville, you're basically going to get a lightsaber line. So if you want a beautiful kind of streak shot that has a nice long arc, you need to go a little bit farther north or south. Just thinking for the, photographers out there on the coast starting to line up.
Although there is nothing wrong with the lightsaber shot, I have taken quite a few of them and posted them with NSF. So there's nothing wrong with them, but if you are going for that really long streak shot, yeah, I trust Julia's advice on this one completely.
Oh yeah, my last one turned out really cool. There wasn't even a hook. I loved it. But for people who travel and want, once in a lifetime potential things, that's something to keep in mind.
Speaking of people who travel, Florida Space Nerd saying, thank you guys for the coverage. Sitting here looking at 39A, B, and the VAB. Can't wait for my first launch in person. Enjoy. I'm going to make one recommendation to you right now. You have a camera with you or a phone that you were going to use to take pictures or video? Don't. There are plenty of people that will take all of the professional photos you could ever dream of, but there is nothing like seeing your first launch in person with your own eyes. I was told that for my first shuttle launch, and I still hold that advice so dear. That first launch is still embedded in my brain. That was STS-130 back in 2010. Yeah, if you can, avoid the camera and just soak it all in.
And to build on what you're saying, Sawyer, if somebody wants to put the phone down and record just a wide shot behind you, that's awesome too, because it's going to capture you in the photo or the video. But yeah, set it down, enjoy the view, and enjoy the sound, because we still have these lower clouds. And from the launch we just experienced, it was absolutely loud and rumbly. So just take a moment to stop, listen, and soak it all in.
Yeah, I haven't been to a launch, but definitely if I were, that's what I will do. If you want to record anything, be it something that you don't have to pay attention to, like maybe bring a tripod or something and, with a camera or whatever, but leave it, like, just enjoy it.
Exactly. Highly, highly recommend that. Here's a question from Marquise again as well, asking how does Viasat 3 compare size-wise to a Tedra's bird? And at least in terms of mass, I believe this is almost double. I believe it's about 3,500 kilograms for the current model Tedra's satellites. And if I recall correctly, this one is how much is this one, Alex?
I believe it is 6,400,
Yeah, so about
if I'm
double.
not mistaken. Yeah. So
For
you
those
can
who don't
see
know, that
there the Earth.
yeah, from O3B mPower mission, which is
Yeah, the
still
Falcon
waiting for
9.
its final burn. Yeah. Which
Well,
those who don't know, go ahead, Alex.
yeah, I was gonna say I said Falcon 9, but really the second stage is mostly the same for both Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy.
There you go. Yep. For those wondering, TDRS, that is the Tracking Data Relay Satellite Network. So basically, that's a way to transmit data from Earth to space and back. Those were originally launched a lot by the Space Shuttle and have been launched by other vehicles since. But yeah, it helps with ground to space communications. So, as mentioned, this boy is chunky. Here's an interesting question, Alex. I don't know how much you'll be able to compare the two, because I think it's kind of apples and oranges. But John asking, could you compare and contrast the difference between the Falcon Heavy 27 Merlins versus the Starship 33 Raptors in terms of power to weight, things like that?
Well, there's trade-offs. For example, the Falcon Heavy, it has the engines on different cores. So in that sense, it is easier individually to control. The problem is when you have them on different cores, you have things like the loads between the boosters, and the startup sequence needs to be very choreographed in order to not unbalance the engines. And even the separation mechanism for the boosters, they have pushers, but if you burn one booster for longer than the other or something like that, like, you need to control also the rates at which the propellants are being burned, right? And when you have 9 engines on each booster, it's very complicated. Now, and that is very, very simplified when you have a single core. Now, it is true, though, that you still have 33 engines on a single core, right? And being them all in the same core means that they are closer together. So if one blows up, unless you have very, very good shielding for your engines, it might affect the one near to that engine, the one next door. Or in the case of even a center engine on Super Heavy, if it blows up, it can take out multiple engines around it, right? So there are trade-offs. There are good things of having multiple cores, a lot of engines but multiple cores, or a lot of engines in single core. At the end of the day, in terms of reusability, you want single core, though, because those double cores, it is great. The problem is the center core, you cannot reuse it, or it's a very edge case. Like, you can land it back, but the moment the performance and the payloads that you can launch at that point, it's pretty much what you can launch with a single stick Falcon 9. So, yeah, that's sort of why SpaceX, the next rocket was single core. There's not going to be something like Super Heavy with 99 engines or something like that, because it just makes sense to just make a larger single core with maybe a bit more engines, right? Rather than, because the problem is precisely of that, because then you have to hold the whole boosters and center core and everything with you, and yeah, it's not as good. Also, you have more stage separations. That's something that Elon was actually talking about before on a tweet, saying there's so many state changes on the rocket, right? Because you have 3 boosters, 27 engines, then they separate, then you have the center core, the second stage, the fairings. It's that tweet, right? And it's totally fair. For Super Heavy and Starship, you just have 2 stages. You don't even have a fairing with a Starship, right? It's very simple in that sense. You don't have all these separations, which frankly gets very complicated. If you Like, if you are not able to accomplish that separation, the mission is just toast.
Yeah. And again, a reminder, the only place you really want more and more and more cores is your computer.
That was a good one.
Thank you. That was one of my nerdier ones.
It is.
Here's a question for Julia. Justin S. is asking, should we be expecting a jellyfish for tonight's launch? Keeping in mind that sunset, I believe, is scheduled for 7:56 p.m.
Well, ironically, Max and I were just talking about that, and we were actually debating probably not. We're gonna have to change our camera settings. It's going to be a bit dark. If there's a jellyfish based off the cloud cover we've got, we will not see it. At least not from KSC. Your best jellyfish potential would be during the second stage. Somebody who doesn't have cloud cover. Do I think we're going to see it with our views and our tracking? No. In fact, it's almost going to be dark enough to try a streak shot if you're a little bit farther away from the pad than we are.
Yeah, that's a tricky one to capture, and sure it's going to make for some interesting remote cameras that we're hoping for that sunset launch and are now getting about half-hour post-sunset. Let's see. Here's a question for Alex. Blake is asking, since the boosters are expendable, will they still have the thrusters to guide them to the ocean?
Oh boy. That's
Gosh, I'm scared what I just opened here.
Yeah, because normally expanded boosters don't have RCS thrusters. And that's sort of a debate that I sparked on Twitter the other day, because on the rollout pictures of Falcon Heavy, the side boosters do have RCS thrusters. And people were saying, well, because they need them for whatever. They don't need them. The expendable boosters are expendable. They do not use RCS thrusters. They don't need them, and they have flown expendable boosters without RCS thrusters. They have ways to actually remove them. They have ways to patch the hole, as one could say, and they don't need them at all. So why will they put RCS thrusters on the side boosters if they are expanded? That's a good question. Again, they don't need them for separation of the boosters. The separations are with pushers. The RCS thrusters do not fire, and you can actually watch that back on the previous 5 flights of Falcon Heavy. You don't see any sort of firings of the RCS thrusters while they are separating. They are pushed simply by pushers on the center core. And in theory, you wouldn't need any sort of RCS thrusters to control the reentry or anything. Like, they just fall through the atmosphere and down to already presignated areas on the ocean. Those areas are controlled and cleared. We even have, I think, the graphic for that as well, I believe, Michael. And I'm sorry if I mentioned that and you don't have it ready, by the way. But yeah, they have those areas cleared, and they don't need at all any sort of control for reentry. So why would they need them for?
That's what we were
we'll
talking
see.
about in our stream. It's like the same launch team, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, no,
all right, we're hearing a little bit of bleed through, but
One of
that's
them ran
okay. Julia's on site you have Alex and me in the studio for this one. Let's see. While we have this on screen with the double view here, we do have a question from Colin asking, do we know when the final burn for O3B is? So yes, we do. The next and final burn is scheduled to start at T plus 1 hour, 49 minutes, and 50 seconds. That will be a 28-second burn, and over the course of the following 10 minutes between T plus 1 hour 50 and T plus 2 hours, the 2 O3B mPower satellites will be deployed. Again, reminder, there's Sat 3 and 4, so they will both be deployed about 7 minutes apart. See the security helicopter flying around the launch pad back there. Let's take a few super chats here really quick. Isabella, thank you very much for the support. Nerdly Knight, I appreciate this one. Why didn't the Photon carry a suitcase? He was traveling light. Worried my crown might be taken. Anthony Richards here. Always so exciting to watch a launch. Thanks for letting us watch this Falcon Heavy launch. Thank you guys for joining us. That's the most important part. Is we love having you guys with us and taking your questions and answering them and interacting, because this is a fun little community here. And I love the fact that we're able to spread it out to more people with just likes and shares and simple things like that, and get more people on that space hype train, I guess we'll call it. Future of gaming. Here's an interesting question. I hope SpaceX doesn't try launching Starship without a flame trench again. Oh gosh, here comes the flame trench. Do you really see any other method working safely? Well, I can say for Falcon Heavy, no. What you see is what you get. You got the flame trench.
I should say. Oh well, go ahead, Julia.
Oh, I was just going to say, and in regards to that, I don't know what the folks at NASA think about that right now, but we're a long way from anything Starship-wise launching from here, so there is time for things to change. And if you haven't noticed from our prior flyovers, Starship development as far as ground systems has really, really, really slowed down here, probably in anticipation of that launch and to see what improvements may need to be made. So there's my 2 cents on Starship and KSC. Watch our flyovers.
Ooh, yes. Speaking of 2 cents, we do have a quick super chat here from Roseanne DeVasto that I want to say. It says, "Hello, Julia," with a whole bunch of heart emojis and a rocket.
Aw, hello.
I just had to put that in there. Let's see. What other questions do we have here? Here's a good one from Ryan asking, if SpaceX can launch Falcon Heavy to near geostationary orbit, why can't they launch Starlink satellites near their intended low Earth orbit? And I think the answer is they can, but they choose not to, right, Alex?
Yeah, so it wouldn't be a good idea if we were to put these satellites directly into their orbits. They did on like very early missions. I think it was like the first 2 or 3 missions, but they stopped doing that because the problem with doing that is that if they have an issue with the Starlink satellites at an orbit that is 580 kilometers up in space, it takes a long time for them to come back. Whereas right now they're deploying them about 200 kilometers lower than that, around 330 kilometers above the Earth. And if they fail, it takes about 2 or 3 weeks for them to come back. So they don't stay there for too long, becoming space junk if they were to fail. So they deploy them at a lower orbit. They check them out, then raise their orbits up to the operational ones.
There we go.
And one thing that I would like to say is that the poll for go-no-go condition for launch for Falcon Heavy has already been opened, so Mission Control is getting ready for that flight. So we'll see. Still not any sort of confirmation that they're go yet. They are in that poll right now, so once they come out with a decision, we'll tell you all what's the result of that.
And I do want to confirm that they are basically targeting the end of this window, correct?
Yep. Exactly, 8:26 p.m. Eastern Time. I believe that is 0026 UTC.
Right, so if they end up having to hold the count at any point, that would result in a scrub, which obviously we don't want, but just putting it out there for actual information. Which, by the way, Julio, this has only a 57-minute window. Why did we even have these launch windows? Why can't we just send it whenever?
Well, if you send it whenever you want, you might not get it to go where we want it to go. But in some cases, when there is some wiggle room because the upper stage can do part of the work, it allows you that very wiggle room you might need to work through a weather window, especially when you're talking about Florida, as we're getting deeper into storm season and hurricane season starting June 1st. So when you have that ability to have a window, it is to your advantage this time of year. But otherwise, short answer, orbital mechanics.
Yeah, rocket science, but yes. And in addition, there's also a reason we don't typically see like 6 or 8 hour windows is also because you have the range that needs to be closed down. So you're closing down airspace, you're closing down part of the waterways. So at that point, you want to keep those open as long as possible. Or keep them closed as short as possible and open as long as possible, because it is a major route down to Orlando, West Palm Beach, Miami, down that way. So there's that also goes into mind too. But in this case, yeah, pretty much orbital mechanics. Now, Alex, you mentioned we're in the poll being open. So what are we expecting coming up next?
Yeah, so in just a few minutes, hopefully in 2 or 3 minutes, right before that start of the fueling sequence, the launch director will give the go for propeller load. That propeller load will start at T-minus 15 minutes, with RP1 being loaded on all 3 boosters. That is also the start of the launch auto sequence. This is a sequence of events that is automated, so hence the launch auto sequence that I mentioned. Then about 5 minutes later, at T-minus 45 minutes, it'll be the beginning of the center core and side boosters liquid oxygen load. So hopefully, if we get that go for propeller load in just a few minutes, we should see Falcon Heavy frosted in about 10-15 minutes.
That's what we're hoping for. We want to see it get fueled, get frosty, get fiery, and then fly. Boy, alliteration went a little crazy on that one. Back to your questions. You tag us at NASASpaceflight as a reminder. I am a meme asking, why are the side boosters black? And Julia, this Franken Heavy, as you call it, is really interesting. So I want to bring that question up again of why is some of it black, some of it not? What's the deal?
Oh yes, my Franken Heavy. So they're legless boosters. We have B1052, which has a varied life. This will be its 8th flight. That would be the darker of the boosters. And then we have B1053, which is the slightly less charred booster, because this is only its 3rd flight. Although, you know what, Alex, it is a little bit darker than I thought it would be for only having done 2 flights, but they were both also Falcon Heavy flights, which means they got a little extra crispy with the boost back and, turning around, coming back.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's why you're seeing what is basically a patchwork rocket. This is a unique way to kind of give a proper send off to some of our older boosters that gave us a little bit of learning lessons. For instance, how to go from being a Falcon Heavy side booster into how to be a Falcon 9 workhorse.
Yeah, and the reason is actually a little bit serious than usual for a 3rd flight, I should say, is that as you mentioned, for Falcon Heavy, when they do the boost back burn, when they separate from the center core and then start flying back, they're flying through the exhaust of the center core, which normally when they do a boost back burn for a single core for Falcon 9, they fly through the exhaust of the 2nd stage, which is just 1 engine, but for Falcon Heavy, the center core is 9 engines. So that's a lot of suit. And I've just heard they are go for propeller load. So there we go.
All right. They are going to try and launch this Falcon Heavy tonight. 8:26, I believe it was, p.m. local time, so Eastern time here, in about 52 minutes from now.
Go,
And
go, go.
Go, go, go. Well, to give you guys a little bit of a weather update here, as compared to last night, it is so calm out here. We actually have some wispy clouds, not dark, stormy clouds. And it's actually still enough at the moment that the little bugs have come out. And by the way, we do have our Gator security active in the turn basin today. So weather-wise, it's like a complete flip of yesterday.
Oh, wow. That's always good to hear, because yesterday's was pretty rough with all the lightning and thunderstorms and all that not-so-goodness. There's a look right now over at the Port Canaveral, which, again, was pretty thick clouds earlier, but right now it looks like it's not as terrible, not as thick. And a reminder, only specific clouds are weather constraint. Those are ones that if the vehicle flies through it, it could create its own lightning. So not all clouds will cause a scrub, but some do, and those look like the ones that do not. So that is a good indication for a launch tonight. Speaking about the weather, I do want to take this question here from MDHC. Alex, any reason why Florida is used as the most used location for flights, considering the temperamental weather and hurricanes and all of that?
Well, when it's not raining and with lots of thunder and things like that, the weather is not that bad. When it's not like overall the weather is really really nice, but also it's a historical kind of sort of situation where Florida is the basically the closest to the equator that you can get on continental US without going to Texas and overflying Cuba, which, as you can imagine, back in the Cold War, you didn't want to have that to happen. Even though they already did that a couple of times in Florida, let's be honest. But yeah, it's a historical precedence with launching missiles from Florida towards the ocean and avoid any sort of international conflicts. And from there, it just became just the space coast of the United States. And I've just heard the launch auto sequence has started, so propeller load is underway on Falcon Heavy.
Oh, that is great news. And I don't know about you guys, but I've got my Falcon Heavy shirt on today, which don't forget, you can get yours at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. It also comes in hoodies. You can get it on mugs, all different designs, couple different colors. And I just love the design on this one, getting to see the Falcon Heavy being the E in Heavy and the A. It's just, again, another brilliant design by our store team. They've been knocking out of the park recently with some amazing designs. And I'm not just saying that. I legitimately mean that. I have so many of them in my drawer, and I'm still adding to the collection. So a reminder, you can get that at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. We also have metal prints and other fantastic items that you can get on there, too, to remember Falcon Heavy and all the other launches that we cover here at NASA Spaceflight. Here. First, we'll say Jolly, thank you very much for becoming a Capcom member. A reminder, Capcom and above gets access to our Discord, so hopefully we will see you in there shortly. And again, as we are getting ready to begin fuel load, I'm going to ask, how is this fuel loading different from what we see on Falcon 9? Because it's basically the same fuels, right, Alex?
Yeah, it's the same fuel, but you're counting down 3 rockets at a time, effectively, because you have 3 boosters and 27 engines. It's very complicated to go through all of that sequence. It's a lot more propellant that you have to load. So instead of loading at 35 minutes before launch, as they do for Falcon 9, for Falcon Heavy, the propellant load starts at 50 minutes. And this starts with RP1 load on all 3 boosters of Falcon Heavy, followed later by liquid oxygen load on all 3 boosters. That should be in about 2 minutes, more or less, at T-minus 45 minutes. And then 10 minutes later, right at the T-minus 35-minute mark that we are used to for Falcon 9, because Falcon Heavy has the same second stage as Falcon 9, you can imagine that the Falcon Heavy second stage goes through the same propellant load sequence as Falcon 9. So the RP1 load on the second stage begins at T-minus 35 minutes, just like for Falcon 9. But the difference here is that the liquid oxygen load starts 2 minutes earlier. So you will see that T-minus 20-minute vent that we see for Falcon 9, it's actually T-minus 22-minute vent for Falcon Heavy. So that T-minus 20-minute vent, it's actually going to be today, in this launch in particular, it's going to be T-minus 22-minute vent. So we'll see that in just, I think, 25 minutes. 25 minutes to go.
Approximately, yeah. Let's see. Here's a good question from Carbon Rose, asking, with solar maximum approaching, how much does SpaceX have to account for solar activity? So, Julia, is solar activity considered in the weather forecast?
Solar activity isn't necessarily a launch constraint, but it would be taken into consideration by the launch provider if the payload on board may suffer damage from solar flares. So in that respect, it could be a launch constraint that SpaceX would follow because of launch, because of payload provider requests, and nobody wants to lose a satellite to a hit like that.
Yes, that was also big during the Apollo missions. Even they basically used water to deal with cladding for it, but they avoided some really bad solar storms and kind of got lucky in a way. And when they actually flew to the moon and back. Uh, Here's an interesting question again, as we have more people continuing to join us who may not have seen the first launch and the transition over here to our Falcon Heavy coverage. What exactly is this mission, Alex? You may be muted, Alex. All right, I'll answer in the meantime. Let's go ahead and talk about this mission, which is called ViaSat 3 Americas. So, ViaSat 3, as you could guess, is from the company ViaSat that is currently owned by SES. These will be launching communication satellites. As mentioned, there's 3 of them. There's multiple ones that will cover different parts of the globe. By the name, this one will be covering North and South America. It is quite a heavy vehicle, as we've been talking about, with each of these vehicles alone about 6,000 kilograms in mass. This will end up in geostationary orbit, continue as a communication satellite using the Ka band, and will deploy one of the largest reflectors ever flown, which will be deployed at the end of a boom, similar to the one that we saw on James Webb with their sunshade. It's also going to have 8 solar panels, so this is not a tiny satellite, hence why we have this expendable Falcon Heavy here. There are also a few small satellites that will be hitching a ride, some additional customers, and that includes one that is called, Astranus, that is their micro geo satellite, and then we also have a second one from Gravity Space called GS1, which we believe also has to do with internet relations. So thank you very much for that question. And for those who are trying to figure out where we're at in this countdown, that is where we are. And kind of to refresh on that, Chris Rodriguez asking, is this a return to launch site mission or not? Julia?
Sniffle, sniffle. Sadly, it is not a return to launch site, nor is it a return to drone ship mission. This is a fully expendable booster mission, which means we will hear no sonic booms from the return that we're normally used to hearing.
Yeah, we'll be hearing the boom without the M, which is all of us booing that we don't get to hear it.
But we might hear VAB squeals, so
That is true.
it's kind of a trade-off. It's a trade-off.
We've talked about it a couple of times, and I know I've heard it in person, you've heard it in person. What exactly is the VAB squeal, Julia?
So the VAB doors, which can slide up and down, basically they hit a frequency. they kind of rattle from that sound wave, and then they'll hit a frequency, and it sounds well like a squeal. So listen carefully to our audio. Once you hear the rumble, once the rumble really sets in closer to us, you may hear something a little bit more high pitched. And the best way for me to describe if we had inbound boosters because they were coming back, it actually sounds like bottle rockets when a sonic boom happens. So it's just this fascinating. I wish I had a microphone just right near those doors when it was happening so we could get that for you guys someday.
Okay, I'm back.
Well, welcome back. We were just talking about VAB squeals.
Yeah, and how sometimes we'll also hear it, by the way, from Pad 40, and occasionally, like you mentioned, from these. But we have heard them from the press site, but I'm sure it'd be even crazier being right up against it. And it's so weird that it happens to be the exact frequency of the Merlin 1D engines. It's crazy.
I was going to say, that's a very specific thing to Merlin engines because you don't hear it necessarily during a Delta, an Atlas, or even an SLS launch. It is very much a Merlin base phenomenon.
Exactly. Here's a question from John, again, with more generous support. Alex, I'll put this one to you. What are the mechanisms that hold the boosters to the center core, and how are they released during separation, and is it similar to the Delta IV Heavy?
Yeah, so for Delta IV Heavy, I believe they use also struts, but the struts have basically what is called a pyrotechnic separation mechanism, where it's just pyrotechnics breaking a way to break off the connections between the vehicles. In the case of Falcon Heavy, though, it's a pneumatic system, so they are connected between each other, but the connection between them has pushers. So that those pushers allow the system to break away without needing some sort of pyrotechnics, right? And what that allows them to do is being able to reuse that separation mechanism and test them multiple times as well. Even if they were not to be reused, just like today's mission, they still can test them before the launch and not have, because pyrotechnics are single use, right? Once you test them, they're gone. With pneumatics, I should say, those you can test them multiple times and be sure that they're going to be working properly when they have to work during flight. So that is sort of the difference here between each other.
Hey, Alex.
Yeah.
I got a follow-up question. So when we're talking about pushers, isn't that what happens as well with fairing separation? It's a pusher mechanism, and we have an active and a passive half?
Yes, you're right. So in the case of Falcon Heavy, the pusher is located on the center core side of the system, and the sort of passive side will be on the side boosters. So side boosters are pushed from the center core. The center core has these sort of struts with the pusher inside, and the pusher is basically it's pneumatically released and pushes against the receiving end on the side booster as well. It actually has two sets of pushers. It has on the forward end of the boosters and on the back end. So you see on the forward side they have struts holding the boosters together, but also on the aft end of the vehicles. And that's actually what you could see in some of those engine shots from Falcon Heavy, those three boosters connected with each other. And I believe the separation mechanism is sort of like they separate first from the top, and then the bottom pushes as well, so that they can separate cleanly. It's very short difference between the front and the aft, but there's a separation. Those two do not interact at the same time.
I would like to point out where we're looking at on the screen here, we have two different views. Reminder, on your right is the Falcon Heavy, scheduled to lift off in approximately 38 minutes. And on the left is O3B mPower 3 and 4. Rolls right off the tongue. That mission launched about an hour and a half ago from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral as well. And it is waiting for its final burn called SES3, which is second engine start number 3. Once it completes that, it will then deploy the two satellites on board, completing that mission in around the time that it'll take Falcon Heavy to be ready for launch, fueled, and lift off, which I think that's just really cool.
You know what I think is not cool? I'm going to have to put that mission name on my little board when that booster comes back.
Good
I'll have
luck.
to add another line.
Because it's too long.
It's very long.
We'll have to check
Yeah.
what you put in the system for O3B mPower 1 and 2 and see if you can copy the format.
We get what we get, but it's a way to record history, so it all works out.
Exactly. And John, really, with the generosity of the stream, thank you so much for gifting 5 Red Team memberships. If you receive a gifted membership, please make sure to thank whoever gifted it to you. In this case, if you got one from John, definitely thank him. That's very, very generous. Julia.
I was just going to say, and thanks to Max, there was a member video that was put up of him at the pad after remote setup. That was pretty cool. So just those little tidbits of behind the scenes gives you just a glimpse of what it's like to kind of be around these absolutely amazing rockets.
Yeah, there's some really cool behind the scenes stuff. Starship, and in this case, Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy related. I love it. I'm not gifted it. I pay for my own membership because I love it that much. So just putting that out there, that's how much I love it, and it's great work. Here's a question that we've got now from Tim W. It's a very interesting question. Would it be legal to salvage any of the cores from the ocean?
Well, I don't know Julie's take, but my take is good luck. Because there's a lot of things to mention there. The first one is they're probably going to be breaking up during re-entry. Not sure about the side boosters because we've mentioned about the RCS thrusters, so maybe they're doing some funky stuff with them. But the center core is definitely going to be screaming down. With it's going to be burning for 4 minutes until it separates from the second stage. So that's going to go at a very high velocity, and it's very likely to just not survive re-entry at that speed. I just heard as well, the RP1 load is underway on the second stage, by the way. So they're fueling now the second stage. So that's one thing, that the boosters may not be in one piece, but even if they were in one piece, once they hit the ocean, they might not be, right? Because it's like you're hitting the ocean at a very high speed, and even then, on top of that, if they still are in one piece, good luck bringing them around because they're really big.
Oh yeah, so about that. First of all, where they're going to land when they break up, it's going to be really deep. So you're going to have a serious salvage operation. If it somehow by some miraculous feat doesn't break up, because actually our museum just acquired the only piece of a Titan that has ever been recovered, y'all, out here at Hangar C. The only piece of booster that had the first stage booster, you guys, was actually recovered. It was found floating out at sea. So on that note, is it possible? Well, yes, because we've had an abort off of LZ1 into the water here, and it was intact when it landed. It was kind of a soft landing, though. Dragging it back was a multi-day operation, and they would never, ever, ever be dragging it back from out at sea like 1,000 kilometers away. Heck no, you can't do it. Now, should it still somehow be floating out at sea and it's found by satellite image? Trust me, y'all. Some way, somehow, something's going to go out there and break it up. It's not just going to stay floating out there to be a potential hazard at night for mariners. So satellite imagery would tell the truth, and somebody's going to scuttle and go take care of that.
And speaking of floating around, you can see that, well, not now, but the second stage is from the previous launch, the O3B mPower mission, that just launched about 1 hour and 41 minutes ago from Slick 40 Falcon 9 mission. It's still up there. It's going to be performing a third burn right in just a few minutes. I cannot remember right now how far away we are because I'm already in Falcon Heavy mode. So I have the Falcon Heavy timeline and everything pulled up. So I don't fully remember the times for the O3B, but it should be performing that third burn just in just a few minutes, and then deploying the 2 satellites. So yeah, it's gently coasting in space, floating around at almost 7,000 kilometers above the Earth. So yeah, that's really cool because we're 32 minutes away from Falcon Heavy. It's kind of crazy, that they're gonna have these 2 missions going in parallel. It's amazing.
We're about 8 minutes away from that, by the way. So while we're talking about the other mission, Rolio asking, what's up with the foil on the MVAC? Is that for insulation?
Yeah, they use that to protect thermal protection of the sort of what it's called the turbo machinery of the engine. Yeah.
There we go. And again, we will keep an eye on that. We will bring you that burn as soon as it happens in just a few minutes. In the meantime, we want to hit a few super chats here. Cat Herder Camp, thank you for gifting 5 Red Team memberships. Really appreciate it. Where username? Their username. Thank you for becoming a Capcom member. Again, Capcom and above, get access to the Discord. So enjoy that. And then we've got a couple of messages here from our store at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. We have Steven here saying, Happy early Mother's Day for the best mom. Oh, you got something for my mom? No, I'm kidding. I'm sure she will absolutely love it. Oh, that is a great metal print, too. So, good call, Steven. And I hope she enjoys it. And then Anonymous just wanted to say hi. Been watching NSF since Hopper. We live in Corpus and have been down to Starbase a few times over the years. Brownsville Zoo is awesome. Everyone that can should come down to Boca Chica just to see Starship. That's really cool. And thank you for getting all the items in the store there too, including the orbital flight test patch. Let's see. We've been talking a lot about getting really close to some records here. We will rocket you, saying this is close to a record flight of 2 rockets, but couldn't it be considered 4 rockets? Joking aside, Julia, what was the potential record that we just missed, and what's the record that we could still achieve?
Oh, goodness, oh boy. Okay, so 1 hour and 17 minutes apart is the range record, and that dates back to Gemini 10, correct, Sawyer?
I believe it was actually an hour 39 with Gemini 12, but close.
Oh, okay.
Still the Gemini
Hour
program.
39.
Yep.
Which we, now that we're at the end of the window, will not be meeting. Is the range ready to do that and prepared to do that? Absolutely. They've been prepared since December of 2022 for that feat. As far as SpaceX goes, actually, I'm going to throw that back to you, Sawyer, because I cannot remember the exact time of their last record.
I believe their last record at the Cape itself in the same range here was 23 hours. But it's been about 7 or 8 hours, I believe, Alex, if you count Vandenberg and Space Coast. Either way,
Yeah.
it would be a record turnaround between launches of any Falcon 9s and Falcon vehicles, I should say.
Yeah, for SpaceX overall, the current record is 4 hours and 12 minutes between Starlink Group 2-8 from Vandenberg and the dual launch of, well, not dual, but like the launch of the dual satellites, SES-18 and SES-19. And this was, I believe, earlier this year. So they're breaking records one after the other, and they're not stopping.
And honestly, this is what we've been kind of hoping to see here, because each time it's been lined up by SpaceX to be able to do that, one of the vehicles ends up needing just one more extra check, because you got to remember there's only so many people out here to get these rockets to the pad for final integration. So sometimes once it gets out there, they just want to be extra sure, and the rocket goes when the rocket is ready.
And
yes, it will go when it goes. It's a terrible phrase, but it's true.
Yeah, I just checked and I said it's earlier this year. It's actually like less than 2 months ago. It was March 17th. So like 5 weeks ago.
Alex,
record timing.
I was just gonna say, how many launches are we in already this year, though? Last year we talked about halfway through the year we had already met what the prior year had done for launches, and I feel like everything's just accelerated that much more again this year.
Yeah, so we have already witnessed SpaceX's 28th launch. I was trying to make sure that it was actually the 28th because there's so many numbers around. Yeah, so it was the 28th launch, and ViaSat 3 just less than 2 hours, or I think it is 2 hours away from that launch. We are 27 minutes from Falcon Heavy being the 29th for SpaceX this year. So it's just keep going. It's a thing. And you know, the next launch for SpaceX, it's in 4 days from the same pad they just launched today, the Falcon 9. So the same pad is going to be turned around 4 days, which is crazy. It's already going to be a record turnaround time. Another batch of Starlink satellites, to no surprise, because that's when they try to do these crazy turnarounds from the same pad. But yeah, and then the day after, they have another one from Vandenberg. It's just more and more launches. There, I believe there's like 10. So for May. just in 1 month. It's
I'm
crazy.
gonna interrupt you for two quick things here, Alex. One, we
Sure.
have that gorgeous, almost sunset view there at the port. The weather looking much better. Again, approximately 70% go. And here we are taking a look at that mission you just mentioned that launched from 40, O3B mPower. We are, I believe, less than 2 minutes away. Yeah, less than 2 minutes away now from the scheduled restart of
Hmm.
that second stage engine.
A very short burn. It's not gonna be very, very long.
Correct. That is a 28 second burn to be exact. So
Yep.
that will be the final burn before satellite deploy. So this is called SES-3, which is second engine start for the third time. And then we will have SEGO-3, second engine cutoff for the third and final time.
And on that view that we just had from Port Canaveral, that would be that remaining sunset that might have given us that jellyfish, that gorgeous glow that was happening and is still happening behind us at the VAB. That would be the light that would give us those really colorful jellyfishes. So we'll see what happens, but I think our light's going to go away on us.
Alex, are they conditioning the engines right now? Is that kind of what we're seeing?
Yeah, so that venting that we're seeing from the engine is them chilling down the engine ahead of the ignition. It might seem unintuitive because it's like it's gonna be hot, right? But the internals, the oxygen turbo pump, for example, it's gonna have a lot of liquid oxygen through them at a very, very low temperature. So you need to condition them before that start of the burn.
Yes, and a reminder, this one will be placed into medium Earth orbit. So this one will be medium Earth orbit, so used to Falcon Heavy, which will be going into near geostationary orbit. But yes, this will be, I believe that's about 8,000 kilometers up is MEO.
Yeah.
All right, standing by for that MVAC or Merlin vacuum engine ignition. There we go. Looks like we have startup of that engine. And a reminder, this is a 28-second burn. Let's see that nozzle getting toasty. And you can see the speed increasing a little bit even more on the bottom right there.
And all bending and everything.
Love it. And again, a reminder, this is all the way up in space doing this right now, folks, that we're watching that we're able to see it from. Just, technology is amazing. And I believe that would be
nominal orbit
engine.
insertion.
There we go. So the next thing that will happen is we will see two satellites deploy, O3B mPower 3 and 4. The first one will deploy, let me get the correct
in about
timeline.
3 minutes, and then the other one 7 minutes later.
There we go. All of this
All while
we approach the 22-minute event on Falcon Heavy.
There you go. Is that it? Or is just
we're approaching
it? Small. I've seen like a small burst.
A reminder that the T-minus 20-minute event that we're used to seeing on Falcon 9 is actually at about T-minus 22 minutes for Falcon Heavy, but it's still the same purpose of clearing out the lines. I believe they purge them with liquid nitrogen. Is that the gas that we see?
Yeah, so I believe that is the start of the T-minus 22-minute event. Excuse me.
There it is. You can see it on the right side of your screen. And this will continue, I believe, until one of our next major fueling points. So next up in the countdown, after this 22-minute event at T-minus 18 minutes and 30 seconds, that is when second stage LOX, or liquid oxygen / loxygen load, will begin on that second stage. So again, as we mentioned, that is kind of just purging out the line after it filled that first stage there with RP1, which is rocket-grade kerosene, and then we'll transition over to the liquid oxygen for stage 2.
And while that happens, also at the same time, we're going to see that those two satellites for SES being deployed as well. So it's going to be, parallel operation here.
If my math is correct, we should be about 1 minute away from that first deployment. A lot that we're watching here right now, folks. There's a lot going on. That's why we have the 2 clocks. That's why we have the dual coverage here of these 2 missions happening simultaneously. A reminder, both from Cape Canaveral in Florida, one from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, and one from the Kennedy Space Center.
I believe due to the shape of the sort of payload adapter that they use for these SES satellites, might not be fully visible in this shot that SpaceX is providing, but it's not really still fully, like, we're probably gonna have to wait a little bit to see anything there. Blame Boeing for this, because this is their payload dispenser.
A reminder, we love all space companies equally.
Yeah, we bully them all the same. It's a joke, it's a joke. Don't take it seriously, really.
Very true.
And first SES satellite has been deployed. And also at the same time, RP1 load on the second stage has been completed.
There we go. That's where you see that kind of cascading waterfall on the right side of your screen. And as mentioned, the way that it's configured in the payload adapter there, it's a little difficult to see, but that first O3B mPower 3 has deployed. Next will be O3B mPower 4 in about 6 minutes from now. While we wait the 6 minutes for that, what is next in the lineup, Alex, here that we can expect for Falcon Heavy?
Yeah, so that T-minus 22-minute event will stop, and that's going to be the start of the liquid oxygen load onto the second stage. So all 3 boosters are getting ready for that wrap up of the RP1 load on them. So the fuel, the kerosene, is going to be wrapping up that load at about T-minus 8, T-minus 7 minutes. It depends, because it's not all 3 boosters at the same time. It depends on which booster you talk about. Around that same time, all 27 Merlin engines on the first stage of Falcon Heavy are going to go through that engine chill procedure. Just as I mentioned before for the MVAC engine on the second stage, all 27 Merlin engines on the first stage also use liquid oxygen for the oxygen turbo pump, so they need to condition them ahead of ignition so that they do not produce, the oxygen just doesn't boil off suddenly and destroys the engines or something. We don't want that, right? So that's going to be sort of the next few steps that we're going to see there.
Yeah, we'd like to avoid that if all possible.
Yep.
F13 Media, thank you for becoming a Red Team member. And Sam Boyd, thank you for becoming a Capcom member.
Oh,
Appreciate
there we
that
go.
very much.
Look at
There
that.
is the end
Stage
of the
2
event.
LUX load has started.
Yep. There we go, as indicated by the event stopping there. Now, I'm going to send this to Julia out in the field here. I know this was asked earlier, but with the way that the skies appear to be at the moment, is there still a chance of a jellyfish this evening?
Well, to give you one opinion, Max is nodding yes.
And there's
We
the view,
still
by the
do.
way, from the port.
Yeah, I was gonna say we still do have some pink sky behind us. So guess what? The clouds have thinned downrange, and I can even see the moon right now. So guess what? The chances have improved since we started the Falcon Heavy portion of this stream, and I answered the question last. It's better than 50-50 now, but that's the best I'm going to give you.
That's why I wanted to re-ask you that particular question as we get the view here. So we'll keep our fingers crossed for that. Let's see. Here was a question that I saw, and they were asking, what will happen to the second stage? We know the first stage isn't reusable. So, Alex, will the second stage burn up, hang out in space? What's the deal with it?
What second stage? See? Because there's 2 today. There's the one that is still floating around in space for O3B. That one is going to be coming back without the orbit burn. But the Falcon Heavy one, it's going to stay up there in sort of that graveyard orbit that it's going to be sent to. Because that deployment orbit is 1,200 kilometers below the GEO belt, this geostationary belt, precisely to let the second stage just be there without, bothering all of the other geostationary satellites up there in the geobelt, because you don't want the second stage to come near the other ones and become space junk near them and collide or anything. That's not that, no, at all. Nope. So that's what's going to happen for those two second stages that are flying today.
When will the GeoBelt be available in the NASA Spaceflight shop?
Yeah, I think we should.
And again, thank you, Mark Lamb, for that question with the super chat. Also adding, wearing my concrete way to go shirt, sipping an adult beverage, and watching NSF, a most Kerbal Friday evening. Yes, we will hope this doesn't do a Kerbal, but it is indeed a very Kerbal-like evening, especially with these two quick succession launches from the same places. And a reminder that O3B mPower mission is not over yet. We still have one more satellite to deploy. You are currently seeing that view right now, and we are about a minute and a half away from the deployment of the second O3B satellite, which this one we should be able to see the separation, right, Alex?
Yeah, we should just be about a minute from that separation of the second satellite for SES, and very shortly after, we're gonna have wrapping up the propellant load on Falcon Heavy for that launch. It's kind of crazy today.
Yeah. And again, an amazing job by SpaceX and especially Space Launch Delta 45 and the 45th Weather Squadron for taking the range on this one and having a range set up that you can have two rockets from two different pads that are just a couple kilometers apart launch within 2 hours of each other, and it could have been even sooner. So, props to all the teams that worked on SpaceX and at Space Launch Delta 45 for making this happen. I just gotta shout them out here. And for those asking, we should see this burn now in about 30 seconds, and we're approximately 14 minutes away from the Falcon Heavy launch. Not going on all together. And let's stand by for payload separation. Should be seeing that any moment now. And mind, there is a bit of a delay from space to ground occasionally. Standing by.
And I just heard that the second satellite has been deployed. So there you go. Mission success for Falcon 9.
It looks like their video feed may have frozen or is a bit behind, but either way, we have the confirmation of a successfully completed mission there, with both O3B mPower 3 and 4 satellites being deployed into their targeted orbit, Falcon 9 completing its job once again with pinpoint accuracy. So, great job. And again, we continue to monitor the Falcon 9 as well at Launch Complex 39A at the Kennedy Space Center. Yeah, as mentioned, occasionally there's a loss of signal, so that's not unheard of. But you can see it getting a little bit darker now as we get closer to dusk and sunset. Sunset actually should have passed at this point, excuse me. And now we are about 12 and a half minutes away. Julia, how are you feeling and what's the weather looking like now? I know you said potential for jellyfish. What about just for launch in general?
Well, the American flag at the press site is just gently waving. It looks like, oh, the turn basin is glassy. I can actually see a reflection of the Falcon right on the water, although I will say the bugs have come out. It's that time of the day. So just like Alex, I have sprayed anti-bug spray too.
Yeah, people have missed my endeavor with a moth on my room.
Yes, and a reminder, do not spray it with your mouth open, with your eyes open, anything like that. Keep them closed when you spray that. Mentioning this for no particular reason, Alex.
Yeah, sure.
Just remember who's downrange of you when you spray it out in public with your launch viewing. Yeah.
That too, yeah. Let's see. We have Ralph with 5 gifted memberships. Thank you very much for the 5 Red Team memberships. And Nerdly Knight coming in saying, I was told there's a secret payload of cows on board. It will be the herd shot round the world. I don't know whether to laugh or cry at that one. It's both good and horrible at the same time. I like it, though. I'm guessing by the silence that no one else agrees with me that it's at least kind of funny. Here's a question from Space Podcasts, and I'll put this one to you, Alex. Why did SpaceX decide to make this launch fully expendable? We've talked about it a little bit, but is there any reasons other than the weight of the payload on board?
Yeah, they need all that push to put all the payloads into that geostationary orbit, because it's a lot. It's not just like we see with Falcon 9 where they live in on a transfer orbit. They're putting them directly all the way out there to above 30,000 kilometers above the Earth, and it's very, very heavy. It's very, very far away. It's very energetic, so they need all the power of Falcon Heavy in order to be able to do this. Now, an additional sort of what is the term? So basically, an additional reason you could say is that these boosters are very old. Both side boosters, they were produced in 2018, flown for the first time in 2019. They are very old. And newer boosters are so they include differences. They include design changes that have been introduced to ease the refurbishment and reuse of the boosters. So getting rid of these older ones, it's not a big of a deal. So that's another extra perk, one could say, for these two boosters, because they are very, very old as well. So yeah, they're gonna go though with one of the probably most energetic missions that SpaceX has done ever, with a Falcon Heavy going all the way out to geostationary orbit with this big satellite and 2 other passengers as well.
Yes, the 2 ride-along satellites. And yeah, good emphasis there on Falcon vehicle. Let's see. Really quickly, we have a $100 tip, at tips.nasaspaceflight.com from the Hoke family, saying, thank you all for the years of amazing content and knowledge from my 6 kids and I. Keep it up. Well, thank you for watching. Thank you so much for the support. And thank you for allowing your kids to watch something like this. That's why we try and keep it entertaining and family-friendly, so that everyone of all ages, of any spaceflight interest, can come in and enjoy and ask whatever questions you have, and just share the love of space. So thank you so very much for that. Really appreciate it. Jim Cabot with the super chat saying, moo. Can we get a boom, yeah, liftoff like the Aussies do? I don't think we want to use the word boom in any way, shape, or form with this rocket. And then G Forbes with a shout out to Michael here saying, just having a T+ and a T- in the same stream is impressive. Thanks, NSF. Shout out to Michael, who is pushing the buttons, pulling the levers on the stream today, and managed to get those clocks up and running. All right, we are coming up now to about T-8 minutes. And what were you going to say there, Alex?
Yeah, well, I was just about to say that they are already wrapping up RP1 load on the first stage boosters. The core stage is the first one that gets loaded. That's already been confirmed as fully loaded with the kerosene. Next up is going to be stage 1 engine chill. Basically, all the 27 engines on the 3 boosters are going to be chilled down for that flight. PY booster, the one farther away from the... I just heard that call out right now. So PY booster, the one far away from the tower, that one is already completed with the fuel. The closest to the tower, the most suited one and most expert for today, that is going to be next. And then we're going to see that Stromback being retracted. That should be about T-4.5 minutes. And then again, just like the fuel load is wrapping up on all 3 boosters, then it's going to be the time for the liquid oxygen to be wrapped up on all 3 boosters. Also, different times. And I just heard as well, engine chill has started on 27 engines. So there you go. Yeah, it's a very choreographed sequence, 3 boosters being counted down, not all of them finished, propellant load all the time at the same time. So it's very complicated, and definitely we're getting there almost closer to that T0 time.
Speaking of wrapped up, I like getting wrapped up in all my gear from shop.nasaspaceflight.com, especially the Falcon Heavy merch, since we've got the Falcon Heavy launch tonight. And speaking of, you can wrap yourself up in one of our Falcon Heavy hoodies. We've got also shirts. Again, I own, I believe, about 3 of them at this point. We also have mugs with the design, and all of that, again, available at shop.nasaspaceflight.com, along with some fantastic metal prints from everything from Starship to Falcon Heavy and everything in between. We are approaching about T-minus 5 minutes until liftoff at this point. Julia, I know you've got some work to do, so we are going to let you go, and hopefully we will talk to you shortly after the launch.
Sounds great. Y'all enjoy the launch.
Oh, I'm sure we will. You, please enjoy it too, in person. All right. So Alex, as you mentioned, we had the side boosters that were being completed with their fuel loading. Is there any fuel loading that still needs to be completed?
Yeah, so the fuel is already completed on all 3 boosters in the second stage, so no more RP1 is being loaded. Now the tanks are going to be pressurizing for that stromback retract. It's going to be sort of the same deal that we've seen with Falcon 9 just 2 hours ago. The stromback will retract first the top clamps and then move away as well. Liquid oxygen will wrap up about 3 minutes before launch on the first stage, and then 2 minutes before launch, it's going to be the time for the second stage. After that, Falcon Heavy will take over control of the countdown at T-minus 1 minute, and that should be the moment where the launch director should be giving the go for that launch. So hopefully everything is green for that liftoff in just 4 minutes and 28 seconds. Now less seconds because I took time to mention that.
Yeah, we should be seeing the strongback retract. That's that long, tall, white structure there that you see. It leans back just a couple of degrees. We're not talking very far, but following T0, it will throw itself back completely to get out of the way of Falcon Heavy as it flies up. And that strongback there has 2 different configurations, one for fairings and one for Crew Dragon. So this one is in the fairing configuration for the ViaSat launch here.
Mm-hmm.
So we should be coming up on LOX load complete in each of the boosters momentarily.
Yep. Gonna be, again, staggered. MY booster completed. That is the one closest to the tower that already is completed with fueling. Both kerosene and liquid oxygen unloaded on that booster. Should be next. The other booster is already now completed as well with the liquid oxygen, and then it's going to be center core. It's very complicated, right? Because it's like every booster is being loaded differently. How do they do that? Right?
It's impressive, just like how when they do land, which they won't unfortunately on this mission, they do it ever so slightly staggered. But we are continuing the count at this point. As a reminder, like we were talking about the fuels, Falcon Heavy uses liquid oxygen as its oxidizer and RP1 as its main fuel, and that is a refined form of kerosene, which is a carbon-based fuel.
And I just heard center core LOX load is complete. So all the first stage is just now loaded and ready to go, just waiting for that second stage in just 30 seconds to be loaded with liquid oxygen.
Fantastic. And it's been a fantastic turn of weather, too, considering that originally we were looking at 30% chance of go, then 50, then 70, and at this point it appears that everything is go at this point. We'll get the official go for launch, I believe, about 45 seconds before liftoff. And we continue to count down at this point. Just about to hit the T-minus 2 minute mark. 2 minutes and counting till Falcon Heavy hopefully takes off.
And stage 2 LOX load is complete.
There we go, which we see another vent indicating that as well. As we mentioned, you get that line purged beforehand. The line is also purged before liftoff. So that's why you're seeing that smoke. It is 100% normal and expected.
Next up will be Falcon Heavy in startup. That is when it takes control of the countdown sequence, this automated choreographed sequence of events. And that is when, all the systems are going to be checked out. Launch director is going to call that go for launch, and hopefully we see that launch in just 1 minute and 10 seconds.
Exactly. That call for Falconize and Startup should be coming in less than 10 seconds now. Should expect to hear that momentarily. And then we will have, hopefully, the go for launch and propeller tank flight pressurization. Also,
Falcon Heavy is in startup.
the flight computer is doing its pre-launch checks.
We have an abort.
All right. As we mentioned, this is towards the end of the window, which meant if it didn't go now, there was a hold of any kind, it meant an abort. So, unfortunately, there is no
the
time
launch
remaining
director
in the
just
window.
called an abort on the launch countdown.
Yep. They haven't specified
stand by.
exactly what reason, though, correct?
Yeah, they haven't specified just yet. Standing by for confirmation. Obviously, at this point in the countdown, folks, you know what's the deal with Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy? Once they load propellants and this far into the window, they are not going to be able to return back for another try today. But, you know, we're going to stay here just waiting for SpaceX to confirm anything and see what happens. But, you know, it's a shame. It's just 1 minute away. Ugh.
Yeah, and everything was starting to finally trend in the right direction, but as mentioned, this is an extremely complex vehicle. Like you mentioned, how having them slightly stagger with the fueling and then have to work all in tandem at liftoff, that is a lot of things that can go wrong. It's amazing when it goes right, but unfortunately, that's a risk with rocketry, and as I always like to say, you'd rather be on the ground you are wishing in the air than in the air wishing you were on the ground.
Yeah, and definitely the complexity of Falcon Heavy cannot be overstated. It's basically counting down 3 rockets at a time. You have 3 boosters, 27 engines. It is a beast in its own, right? And just like we saw with Super Heavy as well, Super Heavy is very complicated too, but this is a very special kind of complicated, right? Where you have different fuelings, different rates, and things like that. Yeah, and I mentioned before that when it is T-1 minute, Falcon Heavy computers take control of the countdown. They also run checks, so it's very usual at that point if they might catch something that probably the mission control center has maybe like not really considered too much, because it's like, yeah, it's not a big deal, but maybe the computer is like, yeah, well, no, I think it's a bigger deal, right? And sometimes it's just down to a sensor or something like that. So unfortunately, might be that the case. I'm not saying it is. We'll have to wait for confirmation from SpaceX. But sometimes when it is that time, it usually is from the computers. We'll see though.
Exactly, and it might just not be that it's overlooked, but it's something that happens in the matter of microseconds that the computer is able to catch before the human eye can catch it.
Mm-hmm. They still have manual control for abort all the way to T-minus 10 seconds, but at that T-minus 1 minute point, it is true that, you know, the computers, just because they are sort of handing off things from the ground all to the rocket, the rocket itself is like, okay, how am I doing? Is this going well? This other thing, right? And if it does those checks and it's like, yeah, it can still abort automatically on its own.
Julia, how you hanging in?
Oh, you know, rockets do what rockets do, and sometimes they don't. So it's nothing new. I guess we'll wait and see when SpaceX says we're going to try this again. I imagine they have to see what it was that tripped this abort and possibly do some investigating. So obviously a little disappointed after last night's storms and having beautiful weather today, but this is how the cookie crumbles.
Yes. Unfortunately, we will have to save launch cookies for another day and try again. I'll let you go so you're not getting eaten alive by the bugs out there. So you and Max, Julia Berger and Max Evans, thank you both so much for all of your help from the field for both launches on this one with the great tracks and the great info from the field.
Definitely.
All right. We'll see you guys next time.
Yes, I do want to hit a few super chats here really quick. Super Steph saying thank you for all you do at NASA Spaceflight. We appreciate you watching. Thank you for watching and tuning in and for the super chat. Sean saying it's bedtime, Rooster. It is almost our bedtime now, I guess. Brent Dean, thank you for gifting a Red Team membership. Rockets Rule talking about a similar payload on Atlas 5. Jeff getting an item from the store saying amazing progress. Proud of the team and to be an American. Great choice, by the way. So we're just talking about that. Shady Guy, I'm sorry you didn't get to see a launch live in person for the first time, but keep your fingers crossed. They may do a 24-hour turnaround and try again. They may have to wait a few days. Unfortunately, it's rockets, so we don't know, but hopefully you can stick around. Nathan, everyone asking to hit the like button. Appreciate all the likes and subscribes, especially for our new show this week in Spaceflight, which you haven't checked that out and liked it. Hosted by Alicia. It's phenomenal. And then Anonymous with the item from the store as well. So thank you. All right, at this point, we've been on the air for quite a few hours here, covering both launches at once. And Alex, you've been in the back channel for all of this and now on air with me. So, Alex, thank you very much for your support and your commentary today.
It's been a pleasure. And, you know, we didn't see that launch today of Falcon Heavy, but sometimes SpaceX tries to do risky things, but there's always measured safety, right? And today is a proof of that, where, you know, they were trying for that record turnaround time, but if they have to scrub, they have to scrub, and that's what happens. Safety first.
Exactly. And a thank you as well to Michael Baylor, who has been pushing the levers, pulling the levers, pushing the buttons, and doing all the amazing work on stream, including 2 countdown clocks and 2 simultaneous missions at once. Major props to Michael, and thank you very much for all that you do for NASA Spaceflight, and for this stream in particular today. Chad, thank you for gifting 5 Red Team memberships. And for those who don't know, I am Sawyer Rosenstein. I don't have any puns for a scrub other than we will try this all again as soon as we know. Once we know anything, we will share it with you as well on our social media, as well as on all of our other platforms, including the website. And for now, you can watch the safing and detanking procedures on our 24/7 live cameras over at Space Coast Live. Before